Return to the past with a warehouse. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 151, Mr. Wu's Observations. The strange scholar at the dock said his surname was Wu. He wanted to find a quiet and clean place to stay. He was not picky about anything else, just not to go to a place where rich people gathered. Song Laozan counted out a few places with his fingers, and after marking the route, the scholar asked them to take them everywhere to have a look. From the houses of the people near the dock, to the post stations and hotels in the county town, all the places that barely met Wu Shushan's requirements, Song Laozan took him around. Song Laozan had a feeling that Wu Shushan was absent-minded. When he was looking at the house, he was looking at other things. But what is there to see in an ordinary county town? Song Laozan was very confused. He ran 10 rounds in Kingshan County every day, and it was still the same people and the same houses. What was there to see? Finally, Wu Shushan looked around for half a day and decided on a private house in the south of the city. The house was newly renovated and very clean. There are many families nearby, and there is a sense of life in the world. Old and young are happy and contented, and there are many women who do not avoid outsiders, which shows that the security of this place is good. The tea shed set up by the owner of the house is a place where you can have tea and see the customs outside. The most important thing is that the school under construction in Liyuan is opposite, and there is Liyuan Mountain to the south. The tea stall set up by the old man is on the side of the road, and a little further away is a cement road. The long-term and short-term workers of Liyuan pass by the road in groups every time they change shifts. Song Laozan helped Wu Shushan and his entourage settle down, found a place for them to eat, and took them to walk around the important places in the city. It was dusk when everything was settled. Wu Shushan's entourage handed Song Laozan 25 coins and a bag of steamed cakes, asking him to come at the exact time of Mao in the morning to continue to be a guide. Song Laozan was overjoyed and went back with many thanks. The attendant watched his back disappear at the end of the road before returning. Before entering the house, he observed the owner of the house. The elderly couple were busy in their own house. This side returned to the house they rented and said, "Master, everyone outside has gone back." Another attendant fetched water for Wu Shushan to wash, tidied up his own and his companions' beds, and then stood at the door like an iron tower. Wu Shushan was writing something with a soybean oil lamp. Hearing this, he put down his pen and said, "You are not here? Are you done with your work too? Please sit down and let's talk." The two attendants responded and sat down by the window of the outer hall. Their movements were consistent, and it was obvious that they were well trained and not the kind of warriors hired by ordinary families. Wu Shushan said, "Kingshan County is different from other places. What do you think?" One person answered, "There are no beggars in the city and near the city." Another person added, "There are very few thieves, pickpockets and beggars. So even near the suburbs, people can live comfortably and at ease, which is not easy." Whether a place can make the people feel at ease, we can guess a little by looking at whether they're elderly, weak, women and children dare to go out, and then look at their attitude towards strangers. I thought that ordinary towns in the south of the Yangtze River, such as Huozhou and Jiangao, were very remarkable, but I didn't expect that Kingshan County is really well deserved. Wu Shushan traveled all the way from Qiantang, Gusu and Jingling. When he said this, he couldn't help but recall what he saw on the road. Although Kingshan County is not as prosperous as Jinling and other places, it is lively and full of vitality of the people. The attendant said again, "There are a lot of tea stalls and pavilions, and the breakfast is sold early, almost the same as in the capital. Officials in the capital get up very early to work, especially in summer. If you don't eat something to fill your stomach in the morning, you may be hungry for most of the day. Therefore, most officials in the capital had the habit of getting up early and going out to buy some food first, which led to some breakfast vendors in the capital setting up their stalls very early. People in other places generally only eat 2 meals, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. Some wealthy families have an extra midnight snack, but it is not common. There are people who need to eat an extra breakfast, but it is not common, and most of them will cook at home, or just use the leftovers from the previous night. However, the breakfast shops in Kingshan County start selling at dawn, just a little later than those in the capital, maybe almost at the same time, but they arrived late, so they didn't see the exact time. Another person added, most people eat 3 meals. The reason is that the vendors selling pancakes and the water signs of restaurants are set according to 3 meals. Wu Shushan said, although the lives of the people have improved, they may not be happy to have one more meal for nothing, which will increase their annual expenses by 1/3. Unless the price of food is extremely low, they are happy to eat one more meal, or the workload is very heavy, and they will not be able to hold on if they don't eat. The attendant said, it should be the latter. The people in Kingshan are very busy, and there are almost no idle people. The women here have some unique handicrafts to do, and adult men can't see any lazy cement kilns and workshops that are not known what they do, which are crowded. Pedestrians on the road are always in a hurry, as if they are running for their lives. Even the entrance of the school opposite is crowded with people. Those people are waiting for the school to recruit students or medical apprentices to provide free medical services. They are not idle during the waiting period. Sewing and knitting are common. The most amazing thing is that there are people learning to recognize words from the Pinayan table outside the school. People like to be lazy. There are few lazy people in the whole city, which makes Kingshan County more extraordinary. Wu Shushan deduced, based on what he knew, the people's hearts can be used, which shows that County Magistrate Wang is not bad at governing. Mr. Lee can give them money and food, but he can't give them this kind of spirit. The attendant said, there is another thing, too many people here can read. Indeed, there are many people who understand the truth, and many people read notices and newspapers. Wu Shushan was obviously not unfamiliar with the newspapers in Liaoning. Wu Shushan recognized the newspapers held by the people on the roadside at a glance. There are many people who can read, and there are many people who know about etiquette, righteousness, integrity, and shame, so the people in Kingshan County are different from those in other places. That Pinayan method is really powerful. It's funny that our family was the first to discover this, but because of some short-sightedness, we didn't pay attention to it, and Brother Zhang's family got it first. It's a pity. Another person said, the road is easy to walk on. This cement is really powerful. It can be used everywhere to build roads, embankments, and houses. Once you arrive in Kingshan, you can walk much more safely. That's why I want to come and see it myself. People who cling to the old and the new always think that what is said outside is exaggerated. I don't believe it. Sure enough, I came to the right place. Your Majesty has already won the cement for the Ministry of Works, so it must be very powerful. If you don't know why, how can you say that you are against offer it? The guide just now said that Li Yuan paid to renovate the city, suburbs and main roads leading to Shangyang and Kingshan County. I calculated for him that even if the cement was all produced by his family, the cost would still be high. Since he has so much money, he doesn't buy land or property, nor does he move to prosperous places like Jinling. He is neither rich nor indulged in pleasure. What is he after? Chapter 152 Great Educator Li Ju. The next morning, Song Laozan rushed to wait. He asked for a sip of cold water from the tea stall owner, and ate 2 white cakes that Wu Shushan gave him yesterday with the cold water. He choked until his throat was sore, and he barely managed to finish eating before Wu Shushan opened the door. Wu Shushan had already finished washing up, and dressed in a lotus-colored long gown. He smiled and called him into the house to talk. I heard all kinds of good things about Mr. Li in Jinling, and I also heard that he is a playboy, especially good at regulating women, and has a group of excellent female musicians around him. Is this true? Song Laozan choked out a mouthful of white cake foam, which scared Wu Shushan and his followers. Song Laozan hurriedly apologized, and said I'm sorry, and quickly took out a towel to wipe the table and chairs. While wiping the table, he compared the silly image in his mind with the playboy that Wu Shushan said, but he couldn't see any similarities. How could there be such a rumor? The attendant glared and was about to reprimand Song Laozan, but Wu Shushan held him back and said with a smile, why? It seems that this is a rumor? Song Laozan said, it is indeed a rumor. My wife is a part-time worker at the music clothing store in Lee Garden. She has to work in the store for 2 or 3 hours a day. I heard that she is very chaste. Even the personal maid can only be seen once a day. Even when they meet, they tell the master what they did that day, how much money they spent, how much money they earned, and how many bills they received. There is nothing else to talk about. Last year, I heard that the jury master in our county made fun of Masterly and sent him a cart of fire avoiding pictures to mock him for being a virgin. Masterly didn't care, but advised the jury master to cherish his blessings and keep healthy. As for the female musicians you mentioned, you are talking about the opera troupe, right? A long time ago, there was indeed a group of female musicians who came from Jinling. They are now living in the dormitory of Lee's Opera House, across the road from Lee Garden. Oh. So, he is smart, good at business, kind, and not interested in women. He is actually a saint? Song Laosan said, we dare not say whether he is a saint or not. But for ordinary people like us, those who can keep us from starving are good people, those who can feed us are saints, and those who can let our children read and learn are the stars from heaven. That's the truth. Wu Shushan heard the respect of the locals for Li Ju and suppressed the idea of continuing to inquire about these rumors and asked about the daily life of other people in Kingshan County. Song Laosan has awakened his sense of collective honor. He is very proud of everything in Kingshan County and is happy to show it to outsiders. And based on his experience, he found the points that can make outsiders amazed: clean roads, perfect poverty relief, generous treatment, and the magical mystery. Wu Shushan was indeed as Song Laosan expected, and he expressed admiration while listening. He compared Song Laosan's news with the news he had discussed with his followers last night, and his respect for him increased. Song Laosan finally talked about education. Across the street is Mr. Lee's school. I heard that there is no tuition fee for going to school, and the school also provides a full meal. People here are waiting every day for the school to open, so that we can send our children there. It looks like it will be soon. Wu Shushan stopped writing and wrote, no tuition fee but free meal? Isn't this just giving money away? Why? The South attaches great importance to studying, so the imperial examination results of the Southerners have always been better than those of the Northerners. This is a fact. But no matter how much importance is attached, there should be a limit. Free tuition fee and free meal is too much. Song Laosan hurriedly explained, this schooling is different from the schooling of the Jurin Master. Master Lee does not teach the 4 books and 5 classics. The master said that after all, there are few people in the world who can become officials, and even fewer who can study. What will the remaining people do if they cannot pass the imperial examination and cannot study? For a family like ours, it is not easy to provide a child with writing materials and books. If we can provide a scholar, it will be fine. But most of the time, we can't even provide a scholar, and all these years have been wasted. Wu Shushan nodded and said, this is true. I have been traveling in Jiangnan, and what I admire most is the flexible minds of the people in Jiangnan. If the road to the imperial examination cannot be continued, they will change their careers to do other things, and then support their brothers and nephews to continue studying. In this way, from generation to generation, there are always people to manage the family business, and there are always people to study. As long as the year is not bad, they can slowly lead a large family. Song Laosan said, that's exactly the reason. It's the same in our family. Master Lee said that because he wanted to let the kids who can take the exam continue to study for the imperial examination, and let those who have no hope of taking the imperial examination study miscellaneous subjects. The medical school has already recruited some apprentices who can practice medicine while studying. In this way, they can learn a skill and earn some money instead of living off their savings. I heard that many people went to the north to cure smallpox, and they really cured it, which was a great achievement. I heard that next to the medical students, there is a biology school, specializing in the study of grains, vegetables, and fruits. Our Master Lee has been worried that the good seeds he brought would degenerate and reduce yield, so he didn't dare to tell others. If those who studied biology cured the seeds, it would also be a great achievement. I heard that there are also people who teach smelting, building houses and repairing roads, and observing the weather and the stars. There are so many different categories. Wu Shushan said, then I understand. Mr. Lee School was originally built to accept students who study miscellaneous subjects. It is easy to get started, so you can do a job by learning a little bit of the basics and collect some money for the school. That's why Mr. Lee doesn't charge tuition and is not afraid of spending money. Wu Shushan's worries were slightly relieved. He still believed that the 4 books and 5 classics were the right way and the others were unorthodox. But the imperial examination was too difficult and the single plank bridge was too difficult to walk. There were many people who studied for 30 or 40 years and were only children's scholars. How could they compare with those miscellaneous subjects who could go out and make money after learning a craft for a year? If someone taught those miscellaneous subjects on a large scale, there must be short-sighted parents who would not teach their sons to study well. If they led good children astray, wouldn't they be competing with the country in the court for talents? Li Ju avoided this question himself and made it clear that he would only accept those who could not take the imperial examination. Wu Shushan thought that he was really just doing charity and had no other ideas. Song Laosan said, "That's right. There's something even more amazing. Mr. Lee accepts students regardless of gender. Both boys and girls can sign up, but they go to school separately. However, the teaching content is the same. In addition to not being restricted by gender or age, those in their 50s or 60s can also come to school during the busy farming season. I heard that the first round of slack season classes will be held this winter. Several elderly mothers and fathers in Lee Garden can read books and newspapers. Who wouldn't envy them? If the harvest is good this year, my wife and I would also like to sign up to study there." Wu Shushan disagreed with this, but seeing that Song Laosan was beaming with joy and obviously looking forward to it, he didn't say what he really meant and asked, "Then, is the county school in your county happy with Mr. Lee's efforts?" Mr. Lee said that when children reach school age, they should first learn the classics. When they are 6, 9, and 12 years old, they will be organized to take the examinations of all the children in the county. After the examination, those who have good grades and can take the imperial examinations will go to the county school. Those with poor grades can try to take the imperial examinations. Only those who don't want to try or whose families are really poor can go to Lee Yuan Academy. In order to make the children have a bright future, Mr. Lee bought a piece of land of 300 acres and gave it to the county school. All the money and grain produced from the land will be given to the county school. If there are those who are good at learning and have good character but cannot afford the tuition, the money will be used to help them pay the tuition. Master, who doesn't like to see such a toss? It's all a good thing. Chapter 153, Finishing a small matter and causing a big one. Yes, it's a good thing. Wu Shushan responded to Song Laosan's words with a smile. Teaching without distinction, exempting them from tuition fees. How can it not be a good thing? I just don't know if it will shake the foundation of the country in the future. I've gone off topic. The most important thing at the moment is to find out the situation of the entire Qingshan County. After all, after County Magistrate 1 was transferred, it was Wu Laoki's turn to be the county magistrate. How can he take office without finding out the situation of the entire Qingshan city? Wu Laoki is the 7th child of the Wu family in Yanzhou South Road. He grew up in the capital with his grandfather since he was a child. He was lazy in studying. Although he didn't make great achievements, he passed the examination safely and became a juren. Last year, his grandfather retired. Before retiring, he asked for some protection for his grandchildren, so Wu Laoki was promoted from an idle person to be appointed as a county magistrate. Wu Laoki learned that he was very likely to be transferred to the position of Qingshan County Magistrate. Even if he was not the Qingshan County Magistrate, he would be the county magistrate in the area of Jiangnan. So he simply packed his bags and took his guards with him and rushed to Qingshan County from afar. He had a good impression of Qingshan County. The doctor of Qingshan County went to Yanzhou South Road for treatment. As a native of Yanzhou South Road, he also accepted the favor. It is very difficult to be a good county magistrate. In particular, the current dynasty does not allow local officials to serve in their paternal and maternal clans and their hometowns. Therefore, all local officials are outsiders. It is difficult to encounter a situation where a strong dragon cannot suppress a local snake. It is a very profound knowledge for local officials to deal with local people. It is not good to be too arrogant, too humble, too far, and too close. County Magistrate Wang is lucky. The people of Kingshan County are essentially honest and honest. They want to work hard to make money and change themselves, which means that they will not get too stiff with the county magistrate, who represents the court. In addition, Huang Jiren and others are open-minded and upright. With their help to reconcile, the scholar county magistrate and the wealthy businessmen and nobles get along well. With Li Ju in the past 2 years, the situation is even more special. Li Ju brought too many possibilities to Kingshan County. Unless they were provocative and had to find trouble, it would be difficult for everyone to focus on their own affairs and have conflicts. Instead of finding fault with others, it would be better to quickly build a good relationship with Li Ju and circle some industries for their own family. Kingshan County seems ordinary, but in fact it has attracted the attention of bigwigs at all levels from all sides. The position of county magistrate in this county is very refreshing. Of course, great pressure also corresponds to great interests. It can be said without hesitation that even a pig can get an excellent evaluation for 3 years as the county magistrate. As long as Li Ju gets his grain out and trains a few more scholars, everything will not be a problem. Just lie down and let Li Ju lead the way. Wu Laoqi will certainly not be satisfied with just leading the way. From the perspective of personal career, if what he did in Kingshan County for 3 years is similar to what a pig can do, what will he rely on to get promoted in the future? From a broader historian's perspective, Li Ju obviously wants to leave his name in history. If he doesn't keep up, wouldn't it be a waste of such a good opportunity? Every scholar wants his name to be recorded in history books. The Wu family missed out on Pinyin and the miscellaneous studies of 100 schools of thought. The uncles and aunts in the capital are still jealous of Zhang Zubu, Wan County Magistrate and Huang Jiren who have been recorded. But it doesn't matter. After this year, everything in Kingshan County will belong to him. Wu Laoqi. Huang Jiren, who was jealous of Wu Laoqi, was very happy today. He compiled a commonly used dictionary, and a whole cart of drafts was dumped in Li Ju's study, which could almost bury him alive. Dictionaries are good things. The commonly used dictionary has more than 2,000 words, which is enough for most people to use for a lifetime, and it is also convenient for most people who want to learn to read. Li Ju once said that, as long as it was made, he would give a dictionary to all the schools in Kingshan County for free, about 24 people with one, for easy use. After Huang Jiren learned about it, he worked even harder, and finally made the draft for Li Ju before the busy farming season. After Li Ju, Yu Fu and others have proofread it. It can be sent to the printing workshop in Liyuan for printing. Dictionaries take decades or hundreds of years to print, and tens of thousands of copies can be printed. It is completely possible to use wood blocks, and there is no need to pursue the use of movable type. Li Ju did not expect that Huang Jiren would compile a draft so quickly, as if he had been injected with chicken blood. He was quite surprised. He did not know much about the words and phrases of this era. He only looked at the search and content display methods and thought that it was in line with the logic of use, so he thought there was no big problem. As for the taboos, wording, format, etc. involved, only old scholars like Yu Fu could understand them. Huang Jiren also had this idea, so he asked someone to invite Yu Fu to discuss it together, and he held his little daughter and played with Li Ju. Little girl Yu Yaoniang is now half a year old and is very cute. Even people outside know that if Yu Yaoniang is in the Li family, it will be easy to talk about business with Li Ju at this time. While waiting for Yu Fu to come, Mr. Huang drank tea while watching Li Ju coaxing his daughter with a fluffy rabbit doll and said with a smile, "If you like the girl so much, why don't you have one of your own? You are already at this age. Since you call me brother and your sister-in-law, it is our responsibility to look after her for you, right? Last time you said that you didn't want to marry a wife or concubine for the sake of the child, which would be an injustice to the girl, but I think Miss Kyan Han likes yours very much. If you marry her, it will not be an injustice to her at all. Why not? I like you and Yi, not any child. What if I don't like the child after it is born? Can I put it back? Let's talk about it later." Mr. Huang said, "Don't digress. Is this a problem with the child? How can you not like the child if it is really born? You are both good looking and smart. According to your genetics, the child you give birth to must be beautiful and smart. Even if she can't catch up with my Yu and Yi, she should be almost the same. How can you not like her? Or do you dislike her because of her poor background and uncleanness? Not really. Would I look down on other people's background? Others may not know, but you do. As a hero, never ask where someone comes from. This is my philosophy. Kyan Hong's background and past have never been a problem. Li Ju even admired her overall view and organizational skills, but he just wasn't attracted to her. Li Ju didn't feel that way. Brother, don't worry about me. I will have to go to other places sooner or later. Why bother delaying the girl? What's more, what I want is a like-minded person, and this has never changed. Kyan Hong is very good and deserves someone who likes her and who also likes her. It's just that this person is not me. Okay, alas. Mr. Huang saw that Li Ju was serious, so he stopped pursuing him. I really don't know what kind of girl can accept a monster like you. What a sin. Your sister-in-law is still looking for girls for you everywhere. But your sister-in-law also said that Kyan Hong is good, but she doesn't get along with you. She can be a sister and a subordinate, but she is not good enough to be a daughter-in-law. Your sister-in-law wants to find girls with insight and breadth of mind from a scholarly family. It seems that she understands you better. If you really find such a girl, why don't you meet her? Let's talk about it later. Li Ju was afraid that if he rejected Liu Huang, he would provoke him to talk at length, so he hesitated. However, he was not worried about the result of Madame Zhu's meeting with the girl. Firstly, County Magistrate Wan would be transferred to a new county magistrate next year, and the typesetting and publishing of the dictionary would be complicated. Mr. Huang would definitely be very busy and would not be able to take care of this. Secondly, it was not easy to meet a young lady from a scholarly family. In the Jiangnan customs, they might not be able to leave their embroidery building before getting married. And as a grown man, how could he go to the backyard of someone else's house to see the concubines? Maybe the only lady he would see in his life was Yu Yaoniang. Chapter 154. Scholar Wu arrives at Li Garden. When Huang Jiren was compiling the dictionary, Yu Fu had already participated in some of the work. Huang Jiren asked him to check and proofread it. Yu Fu believed that he was already an insider, and it was inevitable that he did not know the true face of Mount Lu, so he discussed with Huang Jiren to send out a letter of invitation to invite some gentlemen to check and proofread it together. Li Ju held his daughter in one hand and made marks on the manuscript with the other hand. I think we should invite the teachers and students of the school to take a look together. Huang Jiren understood immediately. The dictionary is for everyone to use, so they naturally need to be able to use it. Your idea is good. We should select more students and people who have just learned to read to study together. Li Ju smiled and said, it is because you have a broad mind that you can do this. There are many people who look down on us, let alone those who have just started to study to give us advice. Huang Jiren said, so it is not easy for you and I, who have bad tempers, to meet each other and become close friends. If we had never met, it would be a pity. Li Ju agreed very much. If the people he met when he first arrived in Dayang were not Huang Jiren and County Magistrate Wang, who knows what would happen now. These two may have their own plans, but they are both very broad-minded. Li Yuan and Huang Jiren recruited people everywhere to criticize the dictionary, which caused some discussion in Qingshan County and nearby counties. Li Ju hoped that more people who had just started learning to read would sign up, but this hope was dashed. For most people, reading is a sacred thing. Huang Jiren is a saint, the god of literature, who dares to find fault with the god of literature? Anyway, they, the common people, don't dare. However, those old pedants and old-fashioned people who are particularly proud of their status did not sign up. They are proud, waiting for Li Ju to send a letter of invitation, and then 3 invitations and 3 rejections, before they can be considered to have status. How could Li Ju think of this? In his opinion, those who come on their own initiative are intentional, and those who don't take the initiative don't need to be forced. So in the end, 7 or 8 scholars who can read quite well were selected from those who signed up on their own initiative. Some of them are teachers in private schools, some teach a few children of neighbors to study at home to make a living, and there are also poor scholars who make a living by writing letters and spring couplets for others. In the past 2 years, because the literacy rate in Kingshan County has skyrocketed, this kind of people have almost lost their livelihood. Those who took the initiative to sign up to proofread the dictionary compiled by Huang Jiren had their own plans. A small number of them had a utilitarian mentality to get close to Huang Jiren and Li Ju. Some people were willing to take a look first because they thought the dictionary was for students and were afraid that the content was not appropriate. Some people wanted to find a job in Lee Garden. Wu Shushan was also among these people and was directly selected by Huang Jiren and stayed. Wu Shushan grew up in the north and traveled to many places when he was a teenager. Like Huang Jiren, he had the temperament of traveling thousands of miles and reading thousands of books. The two met each other too late. Li Ju took a look at Wu Shushan and felt that this person was not simple. How could Li Ju not see the problems that Song Laozhen could see? He even saw more than Song Laozhen. Accent, conversation, clothing fabric, or raw materials for judgment. It's just that Wu Shushan looks kind and has no other concealment and evasion except his identity and origin when speaking, which can basically rule out the suspicion of threat. So Li Ju doesn't intend to tell the truth. Since Huang Jiren thought he could do it and Yu Fu did not object, Li Ju would not interfere. The dictionary was compiled by Huang Jiren, so of course Huang Jiren had the final say. Wu Shushan had already visited Kingshan County, especially the Barren Mountain and the school in Liyuan, which had always been his focus. Strangers often passed by and wandered around the Barren Mountain, and there was nothing to keep secret, so Wu Shushan did not attract anyone's attention today. This was even more true for the school. These two places had a sense of nothing can be hidden from others, so Wu Shushan was more curious about Liyuan's family. He was still worrying about how to make friends without making a fuss, and the opportunity came to him. Wu Shushan and several other scholars who were selected for proofreading lived in the guest rooms provided by Liyuan. His two followers wanted to follow, but Wu Shushan refused. The two followers had to rent a small house near Liyuan and waited outside the corner gate every day for Wu Shushan's instructions. Li Ju discovered them the day before and almost arrested them as robbers who were scouting the area. If Wu Shushan had not quickly claimed the two followers, he would have had to go to the prison to look for them the next day. Mr. Huang suggested that the two followers of Scholar Wu be placed in Lee Garden, but Scholar Wu himself refused. The master has no attendance, so we should follow the master's wishes. Besides, I think the examiners selected by the two wise brothers have taken all aspects into consideration, so as to check from all aspects. No one else has attendance, and if I bring two more followers, it will be one thing that will invisibly usurp the throne, and it will make others subconsciously give me some attention. Besides, there are many female servants in the mansion, and two more strong men will inevitably add another layer of trouble. I think the boys in the master's family are all smart, and they can definitely handle things. Why bring two big men and cause trouble? So Li Ju looked at this Scholar Wu with admiration, and Mr. Huang was even more amazed. So they arranged the two followers in the outer courtyard of the Huang family, where the environment was better, and it was convenient for them to listen to their master's orders. Scholar Wu got his wish, and entered Lee Garden. Every day, he checked and verified the dictionary compiled by Mr. Huang with everyone. If there was anything he didn't understand, he would write it down and take it to Mr. Huang for discussion at the appointed time. At dusk or during rest time, Scholar Wu had nothing to do, so he wandered around Lee Garden. Sometimes he was alone, or accompanied by Huang Zhi and Yu Fu. Except for the warehouse, all other places were open to him. The proofreading work itself was very easy. Scholar Wu was very interested in the phonetic dictionary. He would get excited easily if he was interested. He would work for 10 days in a row without feeling the time passing, but would be very excited. The 4-hour work system implemented in Lee Garden was also effective for these scholars. It was midsummer, and the daytime was long. After deducting the 4 hours of regular working time and the time for eating, there were still 2 hours for rest. Wu Shushan's excitement lasted until the break time, and coupled with his novelty of Lee Garden, he didn't feel tired at all after walking around the garden for 2 hours. Wu Shushan was most concerned about two places. One was the main hall, where Li Ju would teach the farmhands of Lee Garden every few days. In addition to basic literacy and reading, the content of the class was knowledge closely related to farming and working. Most of what he taught in class was printed in miscellaneous studies of 100 schools. It was not as systematic and professional as the course of the school, but it was definitely enough to lay the foundation. Wu Shushan always felt that what Li Ju taught would shake the foundation of the imperial examination, so those inconspicuous and seemingly unimportant knowledge were all taken to heart. Another place that Wu Shushan paid attention to was the experimental field. The court had erupted several debates around Li Garden, and Wu Shushan had heard a little about it. Even before he set off, people from both sides had come to him and gave him hints. One faction wanted to kill Li Ju with strange skills and tricks to prevent him from gaining reputation and status and spreading his own doctrines. This faction accounted for the majority and was the opinion of the cabinet elders and university scholars. The other faction hoped that Li Ju could give more doctrines. They had not yet decided how to treat Li Ju, but this faction had good intentions towards Li Ju. The most typical one was the Zhang family in the capital. Wu Shushan, who was good at playing both sides, naturally did not offend the two waves of lobbyists who came to his door. He did not make promises easily. He would rather see the real situation with his own eyes. The two factions had argued several times in the court, but the results were all shelved. Everyone was waiting for the harvest results of Li Garden's fine varieties. This year's harvest would directly affect the emperor's attitude. Therefore, Li Garden's experimental field became very important. Chapter 155, True Comrades. Wu Shushan thought Li Ju was very cunning. This dynasty was newly established, and the whole country was resting and recuperating. People's livelihood was more important than heaven. When Li Ju taught his miscellaneous studies, he combined all the knowledge around agriculture-based, as long as it can feed more people, as long as it can keep more people alive and not rebel, no matter who is in power, they will give way to agriculture-based. Wu Shushan heard two new lessons, one about the basic concept of the height relationship between the sun and the ground, and the other was an extension of the previous lesson, involving some concepts of summer monsoon and winter monsoon, typhoons, and oceans. Most students heard about the relationship between farming and the north-south position, geographical environment and climate seasons, and learned how to take better care of crops and how to understand a new region. But Wu Shushan heard the movement of heaven is constant. He felt that Li Ju's doctrine was an extension of Zunzi's school, and the doctrine and thought represented by Li Ju was challenging Confucianism. Li Ju not only wanted to sever the unity of heaven and man and divine right of the emperor, but was even very likely to challenge the fundamental principle of son of heaven and receiving the mandate from heaven. When Wu Shushan first thought of this, he felt that he was shrouded in a chill from head to toe. After carefully observing Li Ju's behavior and words, Wu Shushan was more confident in his guess. Li Ju was not just talking about miscellaneous studies, but was talking about rebellion studies. The four words receiving the mandate from heaven are so important. It is the source of the legitimacy of the emperor's rule over the world and the link between the fate of scholars and the emperor. Li Ju did not directly doubt God's will, but taught the world that there is no God's will in this world, and everything is natural. Wu Shushan found it very interesting. He was not a person who followed the rules. If he was that kind of person, he would not have spent half of his life in laziness. He was sent to Jiangnan, and there were some complaints from his family members that he was disappointed with him. It is not surprising that Li Ju, a man with a mysterious origin and no sense of superiority and inferiority, would challenge the fundamentals of this world. It is very likely that he has found the right path, which is worthy of special attention. Fighting against fate. You have courage. It would be a pity if you can't witness such a story with your own eyes. Wu Shushan wrote down this incident in his travel notes. He recorded a lot of random thoughts and observations. He would write about one place for about 3 or 5 pages, and would write a little more if he came across a place that was particularly worth writing about. For example, when he first arrived in Jiangnan, he settled in Jiuwu Mountain on Huobi Road. After crossing the mountains and rivers, he saw that the customs and people were completely different from those in the north of the mountain, so he wrote a full 9 pages of notes on Jiuwu Mountain, recording in detail the novelty of a northerner who first arrived in the south. Wu Shusheng's observations in Jinling were about 7 pages long, and his notes on Qingshan County were 16 pages long. The space for Li Ju later was even longer, which could be a separate book. When Wu Shusheng wrote down these materials, he could never have imagined what kind of wealth he would leave for future generations. Ancient written materials are extremely precious, and the earlier the era, the more precious they are. Wu Shusheng, who likes to take notes and write gossip, does not know what kind of waves his notes and letters will cause in the future. Unlike official records, and not as formal and rigorous as the great works handed down from generation to generation, Wu Shusheng's notes are fresh and private first-hand materials, and his background and experience determined that he would inevitably intervene in the major historical turning points of the Great Yang Dynasty, so he left extremely rich historical details for this era. After the future world rescued his tomb, unearthed his essays and interpreted them, the whole country was shocked. According to Wu Shusheng's records, many stories of little people omitted by history were spread, people who were misunderstood were proved, and those great people also showed the vivid side of being ordinary people, no longer stereotype symbols. Wu Shusheng didn't know all this yet, he just simply wrote down what he heard and saw. Mr. Huang also didn't understand why Mr. Li valued the untouchables so much. He would even personally ask a beggar on the roadside why he didn't lie down under the spacious eaves, but slept on the pebbles on the roadside. After learning that the beggar wanted to bask in the sun, after working all day, Mr. Li simply built a square for people to rest on the idle land beside the barren hills in the south of the city. I also went to see the square. It is very good, different from the gardens everywhere. It has lush meadows, water channels, and benches where anyone can sit or lie down at will. People who have nowhere to go can spend the night in the square, and people who want to bask in the sun have a place to do so comfortably. Mr. Wu thought he had seen what Li Ju meant, so he continued to write. I think this little thing and Mr. Li's other behaviors have the same source, which comes from his deep hatred of the distinction between the superior and the inferior. Li Ju does not approve of this world. He wants to practice his own way in the world. I don't know what his way is, but I think it should be better than the current way. Mr. Wu couldn't help but think of his mother. His mother was just one of the singing girls bought by the Wu family. Because she was born with a little beauty, she was taken by his lustful father, and then she became a concubine and gave birth to him. He was the 7th child, according to the entire Wu family's direct line, while the eldest son born to his father's wife was the 8th. Yes, he was his father's illegitimate son, a very embarrassing identity. His father was the 3rd child, and it was impossible for him to inherit the family business. In the future, their branch would most likely separate and live on its own. After a few generations, it would completely become a side branch that relied on the main branch for survival. Therefore, his grandparents hoped that their branch would be prosperous and the brothers could still support each other after the separation in the future. However, his father's wife did not think so. She was eyeing the illegitimate son who threatened her son's status. Even if his father only had a few melons and dates, they were the 3 melons and dates of their mother and son, and they would never allow a concubine to covet them. After Wu Shusheng's mother gave birth to him, she was officially taken in as a concubine. However, her status as neither master nor slave was very embarrassing. She could only live humbly in his father's backyard, and was soon buried by a newer woman. Losing the favor of the master, being missed by the mistress, and having a cowardly character, and not having a capable family to support her, such a life was very difficult to endure. His mother died after only 7 years. If his grandfather had not returned to his hometown to visit relatives that year, and found that the backyard of his son who stayed in the ancestral home was a mess, and had cleaned it up, I'm afraid that even Wu Laoqi himself would not have survived. When his grandfather returned to Beijing, he took all of his brothers to the capital, which saved his life. Wu Laoqi was very smart. In the capital, where a brick could hit 2 4th-rank officials, he chose to be an idle person. After being idle for more than 20 years, he was thrown between the 2 factions in the capital like cannon fodder, and came to Qingshan County, which was put on the fire pot, under the pressure of the competition between the 2 big bosses. Wu Laoqi is undoubtedly very lucky. There are many more unfortunate people in the world. He has seen and heard so many tragic stories that his biological mother is not the worst one. I think what Li Ju means is the same as what I think. Why? Can the mistress decide the life and death of the concubine and the concubine's children? We are all women, right? No, the root of the problem is earlier than this. Why can my father forcibly occupy my mother regardless of her wishes? Just because he is the master and my mother is just a slave? How can a slave not be a human? My mother has her own lover. At that time, she was about to be redeemed, but in the last few days, my mother is also a human being. Why doesn't she deserve her own will? Wu Shushan seemed to be awakened by Li Ju's words these days, and began to question the system he had been familiar with for the past 30 years. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 156 Early Autumn Harvest. Wu Shushan was a humanoid self-propelled recorder in Lee Garden, writing a thick book of notes. Huang Zhi certainly knew his habits, and even whispered to him about Li Ju while he was writing. Wu Shushan also met several of the most representative people in Lee Garden, such as Zhao Sanjiu, who was so beautiful that she could be counted in the capital, Qian Hong, who was charming and graceful, and Yu Yaoniang, who looked inconspicuous, but inexplicably made people feel happy when they saw her. The girls in Lee Garden were different from those outside. In addition to the unique spirit of Lee Garden people, they also had other special temperaments. Wu Shushan was willing to call them having a master's heart in his essay. They were people who could control their own destiny, and did not have to go against their will for anyone else. It was heard that people outside had a lot of opinions about this, including Zhao Xiansheng and Yufu. They thought that Li Ju was too indulgent to his servants, especially letting the girls show their faces outside, which was simply corrupting the atmosphere. Li Ju decided to try to prevent the outsiders from meeting the girls in Lee Garden, and not to have any contact with them, and then let the girls run their own businesses. Wu Shushan also thought that this was not good at first. He and Li Ju were not familiar enough to speak frankly, or even to the extent of alienating each other, so he only occasionally brought it up when communicating with Huang Zhi about the contents of the dictionary, implying that men and women should be separated, and men and women's duties should not be violated. Huang Zhi waved his hands repeatedly. Don't mention this matter. Boxiu, Li Ju's name, means that he can't control what happens outside, but in Lee Garden, people are only divided into strong and weak, and there is no difference between men and women, old and young. Therefore, strong women can do the work of men, and weak men can do some laundry and sewing. Everything is divided by people, not other things. Since you know that Boxiu has no distinction between high and low in his heart, I think you can understand his practice of not distinguishing between men and women. Wu Shushan thought this was strange, but he couldn't say what was strange. Li Ju was too good at making up fallacies and harasses. In Li Ju's world logic, the natives of Dayang could not defeat him at all. After being brainwashed for several days by Li Ju's fallacy, that people are people, the only difference is what they can do, and what they can do, and other differences are superficial. Wu Shushan could only endure this little inconvenience. Specifically, whenever a girl passed by, he would quickly turn his back, and pretend to look at the sky, the earth, and the scenery, but not at people. Usually, when girls and men gathered together to eat or work, they also learned to treat women in work clothes as men. Over time, Wu Shushan got used to it, and gradually believed what Li Ju and Huang Zhi said. Maybe people don't need to be so strict with each other. Wu Shushan also benefited a lot from the girls in Li Yuan. Sanjiu and Zhaolian are very good at business, which is Wu Shushan's shortcoming. Yu Yaoniang can manage the shop and the chores of Li Yuan in an orderly manner, and is more intelligent than Wu Shushan's housekeeper and servants when he was in the capital. Just looking at her appearance, it is hard to tell that this little girl can hold so many things in her heart at the same time. Qian Hong is even more so. She is good at romance, and now she is even more promising, and she has the posture of Qian Jin one step. The Qingshan opera sung by Qian Hong and others is much more interesting than the various operas and Jingyan that Wu Shushan watched in the capital. However, Wu Shushan always felt that Li Ju's plan was definitely not just to let Sanjiu and Yaoniang open a shop to sell clothes, or to let Qian Hang and Wang Bantao make a name for the Li Yuan opera troupe. If Li Ju's plan only fell on a few clothes people, it might not be worth his previous thinking. Before Wu Shushan had time to think about the craftsman on the barren mountain, time drifted back for another half a month, and the autumn harvest was coming. When it comes to grain, all people, livestock, money, and materials have to be involved. Even Huang Zhi's dictionary has to be moved back, not to mention other work. Wu Shushan and others' proofreading work was suspended. Since the end of summer this year, it has been grey and the sun has not been seen for a few days. Li Ju was worried that, if it was delayed any further, the autumn rain would be delayed, which would affect the grain from drying and being stored in the warehouse. Therefore, after discussing with several elderly people, the autumn harvest was carried out in advance. Wu Shushan was very surprised that the harvest time set by Li Ju was a full month and a half earlier than that near the capital. Farmers in the capital generally harvest in mid-August, but Li Yuan's rush harvest was actually scheduled at the end of June. Wu Shushan could understand that, in order to avoid the grain being rotten and the fields by rain, the harvest had to be carried out in advance, but this time was too early. Wu Shushan was very worried about this year's harvest. After living in Li Garden for nearly a month, Wu Shushan had developed an undue sense of belonging to Li Garden. Not only was there a little bit of "this is my family's food" in his emotions, he also had to calculate the attitudes of the two bigwigs in the capital. Would they deny Li Ju's theory because the Li Garden's improved varieties had a reduced yield in the second year? Would they kill Li Garden, which would obviously bring new vitality to Dayang, without any reason? In summary, Wu Shushan was even more nervous than Li Ju. Wang County Magistrate and Sima County Magistrate were almost as nervous as Wu Shushan. This time, Li Garden had an early autumn harvest, and Sima County Magistrate did not have time to come and see it in person, so he sent his staff member Mijiran to supervise. Wang County Magistrate pushed his official duties again and again, and squeezed out a day to go to the barren mountain to see the situation of the barren mountain and the surrounding farmland, and then went around to Li Garden to see the results of Li Garden's 2 acres of experimental fields. Among several crops, only the edible part of corn was on the ground, which was visible to the naked eye. It was much less than last year. Although the size of the rhizomes of sweet potatoes and potatoes could not be seen, the density of the vines could be guessed that they were not growing well. It can be said that the growth of crops in the first half of the year was very worrying. But there was nothing we could do. This year's climate was like this. Not only did the fields in Li Garden reduce their yields, but other fields outside were also in a state of depression and bleakness. Even the decline of the fields in Li Garden was not particularly obvious. The seed degradation that Li Ju repeatedly emphasized also made everyone mentally prepared. Even though we hoped that the so-called degradation was just a low probability event that would not really happen, after Li Ju had been talking about it for a year, everyone silently accepted this result. Not only are there 2 factors, climate and seed degradation, but there is also the issue of soil fertility that Li Ju never mentioned. Without chemical fertilizers, it is extremely difficult to maintain high yields of crops. Even if people who study biology and agronomy in the future solve the problem of primary breeding, he still can't think of any other way to solve the problem of chemical fertilizers. The traditional urea may be useful, but the effect is too small. Before the sickle was opened, Li Jiu first summarized this year's farming affairs in a few plain words for everyone to hear. Seeing that everyone was not in high spirits, he had to comfort everyone again, making everyone believe that, as long as everyone worked hard, they could always cultivate high-yield seeds, and there was no need to worry about the special circumstances of this special year. Wu Shushan saw that the hands of Wu Guanjia, Sanjiu, Yaoniang and others holding sickles were shaking, and their faces showed expressions of regret and pain. He couldn't help but say, "Sir, there are probably still 40 or 50 days before the autumn harvest. Why not wait a little longer, or harvest some first, and save the rest for the future? The rain may not come so soon. The farmers outside need to eat and drink, and they can't afford to gamble, so they have to rush to harvest. Our family is not harvesting for food and drink, but to prove the yield of the seeds you brought." Even if there is a risk of rotting in the ground, I think this risk is worth taking. Chapter 157. Wu Shusheng's jaw is about to drop. After hearing Scholar Wu's words of regret, Huang Zhi said, "My dear brother, you are from the north, so you probably don't know that the autumn harvest here is 20 to 30 days earlier than that in Yanzhou. Although the autumn harvest this year was advanced, it was not 40 to 50 days earlier. Counting previous years, it was around mid to late July." Scholar Wu was a little surprised. Wang Dechen twirled his beard and smiled. "Sir, you don't know that the south cools down slowly, and the sun provides more heat, so the maturity period is earlier. After you finish proofreading the dictionary, you will understand the reason, after listening to a few geography lessons from our master." Scholar Wu then remembered the theory of the relationship between the sun and the earth that he had read in miscellaneous studies, and he couldn't help feeling as if he had suddenly realized something. Li Ju also said, "Based on this year's water, heat, and photosynthesis, even if we delay for a long time, the grain output will still not be as good as that of normal years. We might as well harvest it and see how the year of reduced production compares with the normal year. The more we harvest, the more accurate it will be. Besides, the seeds planted in these fields and barren hills are all the seeds I brought from home. Any less harvested seed is a loss." Wu Shusheng was silent. When Li Ju started to use the sickle, he squatted beside the big scale and waited to see the count. Last year, a cob of corn weighed 6 or 7 taels, so there was a myth of per acre yield. This year's corn cobs look a little smaller than last year's. Li Ju estimated that the yield would be good at 70% of last year's. Butler Wu suggested that Li Ju start with the largest cob, but Li Ju didn't listen. He just broke off a medium-sized cob from the nearest seedling at the end of the field and handed it to Yu Yaoniang to weigh. Sure enough, it was only 5 taels and 1 kyan. Wu Guangji's heart sank, and he said, "Compared with last year's conversion, last year 2 mu of land produced more than 500 catties of corn, but this year it may only be 300 catties." Wu Shusheng was stunned for a moment. He certainly knew that the yield of rice per mu was about 400 catties, so in his mind, the reduction in the yield of Li Yuan's fine varieties must at least be reduced to less than 200 catties, which would be enough to make people worry. But what did he hear? 2 mu of land only produced 300 catties, which is equivalent to 1,500 catties per mu, almost 4 times the yield of rice per mu in the best fields, and even more if it was a poor field. If the world's grain could be harvested twice as much, I'm afraid the number of living people could be doubled, but the price of rice would also have to fall by half. The people of Li Yuan are so arrogant that even grain varieties that produce 3 or 4 times more grain than ordinary grains are picked out as degraded varieties. Wu Shusheng had heard about the grain production of Li Yuan last year, but he guessed that there must be something fishy about the terrifyingly high data, based on the nature of local officials who always like to falsify their political achievements and make empty promises. People in the capital also think so, which is why they are arguing about Li Yuan. If Li Ju really slapped the officials in the court with a grain yield of 3,000 kilograms per mu, what else is there to argue about? Just issue an imperial decree to reward Li Ju and give him a plaque of Daong agricultural god to be placed in the temple of meritorious officials. The people in Li Yuan had no time to pay attention to Wu Shusheng, who looked dazed. Li Ju opened his sickle and they hurried to harvest. The corn ears were collected in baskets and sent to be weighed and sorted again according to the size of the single ear. Yu Fu and his students of biology and agronomy watched eagerly. According to the theory of dominant inheritance, large-sized seeds are always more likely to produce large-sized offspring, and the first step to reverse seed degeneration is to pick out the traits that meet the needs. The same is true for potatoes, sweet potatoes, peanuts, including the locally produced japonica rice. Corn was harvested first, and as expected, the 2 mu plot of land produced a total of 336 kilograms, which was much better than Li Ju's estimate of a 50% reduction in yield, and there were no empty grains or empty bags. It's good that it hasn't degenerated to the point of complete failure. As for the insufficient number of parents, there are so many varieties of corn in the warehouse, which can always provide enough genetic samples. As long as we avoid genetic contamination and complete failure, there is always hope. Wu Shusheng saw the corn being harvested, weighed, and counted with his own eyes. Seeing is believing, and he couldn't help but believe it. He saw that everyone else was holding a corn in their hands, so he took one with courage, turning it around and observing it carefully, as if he was holding a golden doll instead of food. At one time, potatoes and sweet potatoes were also harvested one after another. The yield of potatoes per mu was slightly better than that of corn, with a yield of more than 420 kilograms. The situation of sweet potatoes was a little worse. The fertility of the land really couldn't keep up, and only a little over 400 kilograms. The yields of 5 kinds of crops were written on the big whiteboard. Generally, they were only 60% to 70% of last year's per mu yield, which was not bad as Li Ju estimated. Everyone was still very happy. This level of degradation was nothing. Besides, there was also the reason for the poor harvest this year. If the climate this year was similar to last year, the harvest would be at least 10% higher. Only Li Ju sighed inaudibly. If there was no human intervention, the yield would drop by 20% every year, and only half would be left in 3 years. He really couldn't be optimistic. With this decline, he hadn't taken into account the problem of soil degradation. Yu Fu was the most sensitive to the issue of degeneration. He noticed Li Ju's emotions and patted his shoulder, as if to comfort him. This is all within expectations. It's a good thing. It all depends on our efforts next. Huang Zhi also woke up from the joy of the high yield per mu and said, yes, senior brother is right. Since the predecessors have already cultivated such high yield crops, we should work harder. How can we rest on the merits of our predecessors and not make progress? Li Ju forced a smile. Well, I'll be depressed for a while, and I will continue to find ways to maintain the activity and advantages of the seeds as much as possible. The biggest problem now is that these crops are not native to Dayang, and the seeds I have on hand are not too many in variety, and there are too few genetic sources. Yu Fu said, I roughly know what you mean. We need more parents. You said they are not native to Dayang, so where are they? Sooner or later we will go out to find their close relatives. Since the ancestors of the Li family can obtain the first generation of seeds, I believe we will be able to get them too. Li Ju sighed. It was also a fluke at that time. That place is very far away, about a dozen times as far as the southernmost and northernmost points of Dayang, and most of the journey is by sea. We need more advanced ships. Put away the exaggerated expression, geography is learned in vain. The other side of the ocean is another continent. I said it in class. A distance of more than 10,000 kilometers was obviously beyond Yu Fu's imagination. He couldn't guess what kind of journey it was. He opened his mouth and closed it again. Instead, Dying and Weaving Chen, who came to participate in Li Yuan's most important day, said, hey, why are you depressed? Ask more people when you encounter problems, you know? Ask more questions and you may get surprises. For example, the other side of the ocean you mentioned. Hey, I'm not sleepy anymore. Brother, do you still remember that Liu sold the sparrow bells and glass bowls outside the pass? Chapter 158. After the autumn harvest. As soon as Dying and Weaving Chen opened his mouth, Li Ju immediately understood what he meant. You mean the overseas merchants? Wrong direction. They mainly come from the west, and we can ask them for the parents of rapeseed, but corn, potatoes and sweet potatoes have to go east. Dying and Weaving Chen said, is that so? Hey, they travel all over the country, especially the red-haired barbarians doing business in the south. I heard that they often boast about the news outside, so they must know more than us. Shopkeeper Liu, because his wife had just recovered, and it had not been long, was still in Qingshan County with his wife, and had not traveled far, so he changed the topic with Dying and Weaving Chen to talk about the sea merchants in the south. The countries surrounding Dayang were all influenced by the Central Plains culture, and their aesthetics and interests were highly consistent with Dayang, while the red-haired barbarians in the south were very different. They had other preferences and their demands for goods were varied, which was particularly suitable for doing business. Yu Fu on the other side interrupted and said, as for the seeds, we should still give it a try, even if there is only a glimmer of hope. If we succeed, we may be able to save the people from famine, which is in line with our ambitions. Otherwise, why did Bo Xiu work so hard to teach? In fact, I have to thank Xiu for his biology course. I was planning to marry his cousin to my son, and after reading your book, I realized that cousins are also close relatives. No wonder. I won't say more, I just need to think about my son's marriage. It was indeed inappropriate to continue talking about children's private affairs in such an occasion. Li Ju turned the conversation back to this year's harvest and said, "It seems that we still need to pick the seeds and cultivate the best ones. Okay, old Wu Dalang, take your people to store these seeds according to size and quality." Yu Fu hurriedly called a few students to follow him. "My students and I should also follow and keep an eye on them. We must not make a mistake with the paternal parent." "Go ahead, it's always better to be cautious." Because the warehouse for storing seeds and grains was far away from the fake warehouse that concealed Li Ju's portable warehouse, Li Ju didn't care. Wu Shushan was a little confused, but he kept Yu Fu's words in mind. It turned out that his fiancée was his own cousin, but not from his biological mother's side, but the daughter of his stepmother's sister. When they were engaged, they said everything was fine, so Wu Shushan accepted his fate. But later, he vaguely heard that his cousin and several other sisters were born weak, even a little stupid, and died of illness within 2 years. Wu Shushan was happy to be free and easy, and he didn't care about the rumors outside that he had a hard fate and was unlucky in marriage, and threw these things behind his mind. Sometimes these bad reputations are not all bad things. For example, when the reputation of his hard fate and unlucky in marriage came out, his stepmother wanted to tell him about her nieces and nephews. How could she lose face? When Yu Fu mentioned it casually today, he remembered that he had a cousin who had passed away and was fiancé. He asked hurriedly, "Is there any problem with cousins getting married?" Huang Zhi smiled and said, "That's a big problem. Don't leave in a hurry. Stay here for 2 more days and wait for embarks to give you a genetics class. You will understand it after the class. Not only that, but also the secret of the seeds here." As he was talking, half of the people who gathered to watch the autumn harvest dispersed. Some people nearby wanted to exchange some seeds with Li Ju. Li Ju refused on the grounds that the supply system was unstable, but he also left a pre-order for those who were particularly eager. Just like last year, when Li Yuan started distributing seeds, these people could take one with the voucher. The vouchers of last year and this year could be used together, and they could stay for 2 years. Most people were satisfied after arriving here, but there were still 1 or 2 people who refused to leave. The 2 people who stayed were a man and a woman, but they were not relatives, just from the same village. The man and woman were both old, with ragged clothes, barefoot and loose hair, like beggars. They spoke in a local dialect, which was much more difficult to understand than the dialect of Qingshan County. Even local people like Huang Zhi could not understand it very well, let alone Li Ju who only half understood it. Fortunately, the boy Jeteng could understand some of it. He took the initiative to take over the translation work, which allowed Li Ju to understand the purpose of the 2 people intermittently. It turned out that their village was flooded this year. Especially the fields with low terrain were flooded completely, and there were about 15 or 16 families who had no harvest. These 15 or 16 families faced the problem of survival this year and the problem of seeds for spring farming next year, and they were suddenly at a loss. There were only about 30 households in the village, and other families were more or less facing the situation of reduced field production. Everyone was a poor man who dug for food in the soil. Seeing that their own family could not survive, how could they have the energy to help others? Everyone was desperate, so the elders of the village planned to borrow money from the landlords in the neighboring village to help everyone get through the second half of the year and the spring planning next year. When they talked about this, they couldn't help but wipe their eyes with their dirty sleeves. Li Ju probably knew what was going to happen next. It was just a replay of the situation of Wu Dalang's family. A small amount of money could ruin a family, not to mention the food for half a year for 15 or 16 families and the seeds and farm tools for the spring planning next year. If someone's field was completely destroyed, they would have to pay for the land reclamation. If they met a kind landlord, they could probably survive by borrowing some old grains and chaff, but unfortunately, these people obviously didn't have this luck. As Li Ju expected, the landlord was kind and polite, but he insisted on asking for 5% interest every month. Everyone was honest and didn't know how to count, but everyone knew that even 3% interest would force people to ruin their families, let alone 5% interest. Who would dare to borrow a debt of 5% interest? Everyone was helpless. It was the difference between dying today and dying tomorrow. The clan leader had no other choice. He led everyone to face setbacks several times and was really desperate. He said, "As for good people, there are some. The child of the Jia family in the Yaoniang village ahead, and the daughter of Enayuda who died in the neighboring village, are both long-term workers in a place called Liuan in the county. I heard from their villagers that the master of Liuan is very kind and sympathetic to the elderly and the poor. Why not try your luck? Everyone has been wandering around in the small valleys all their lives. Most people have never even been to a town in their lives. Who knows what the county is like? Moreover, it takes 3 or 5 days to go over the mountains to get to the county town. There is no road on the mountain. It will take at least 3 to 5 days to open up wasteland along the way, and there is no telling what will happen. If you can borrow money, it's fine. If you can't borrow money, you may die on the road." As a result, everyone could not help but be very hesitant, and in the end, only this man and woman made up their minds and risked it, saying, "We will die anyway, and if we try hard, maybe we can save our life." So they took the rations they begged for, carried the hopes of the whole village, and headed for a place they had only heard of. Chapter 159 Easter. After more than 10 days of traveling, the two poor farmers suffered a lot when they arrived at Liuan. When crossing mountains and ridges, they would take the wrong road. Every step they took would lead to cliffs. There were snakes, insects, rats, ants, and wild animals on the road, and if they had not met 1 or 2 hunters by chance, they might have really died on the road. When they arrived in the village, there was another problem of language barrier. The dialect they spoke was not understood by many people in Kingshan County. The two of them gestured and met a peddler who was looking for work at the dock. The peddler was originally a street vendor, and he could understand some dialects in the corners and valleys. This was how they could express their meaning clearly. Fortunately, the peddler was also an honest man. He did not think of robbing them like those black-hearted merchants, because they saw that they were weak and alone. Instead, he showed them the way. The two of them walked and groped all the way, and finally arrived at Liuan, before starving to death. Coincidentally, today was the autumn harvest in Li Garden, and many people came to watch the fun. Li Ju ordered that the door was not guarded tightly, so the two of them entered in fear and trembled. They didn't know how to find Master Li in the crowd. In this way, the two of them were stuck in the crowd, not daring to speak out, not daring to ask, and not being able to leave. It was not until this time that everyone else had dispersed that the two of them were exposed. After stuttering to finish the situation, the two wanted to kowtow to Li Ju again, but were stopped by several people in Li Garden. Scholar Wu took a step to the middle, wanting to hear how Li Ju would deal with it. Li Ju still took a look at the clothes and limbs of the two farmers, and was sure that they were indeed poor people who had been farming for many years. He said, "It's not that I want to accumulate virtue, nor am I more kind than others. It's just that my family's industry originally lacks people compared to other places, and it can't compete with farming for population, so we accept people who can do things." Over time, this spread. It's not my place to take the lead in discussing this matter, so I'd like to ask Mr. Wang's opinion first. Li Ju first picked out the others, and then put County Magistrate Wang first. County Magistrate Wang said, "Such a thing happened under your jurisdiction, but it is the fault of the government office. It should be the government office that provides relief instead of the people saving themselves. Send them home first, and send someone to check whether the situation is true. If it is true, the local taxes and labor service should be exempted, and free seeds and food should be given to the families that suffered the most." Li Ju said, "Your Excellency is kind-hearted, but the government office does not have much money in grain. It seems that a lot has been spent on helping the poor, epidemics, and helping our family build roads. This year's harvest is not good, and I'm afraid there will be bigger holes to fill in the future. County Magistrate, please take the lead, and we can't just sit back and watch you shoulder such a heavy burden." So, if they really suffer a disaster, then from today to next summer harvest, their food and drink will be my responsibility. County Magistrate Wang knew that there was indeed not much rice and grain in the Qingshan County government office, so he did not dare to swell his face and pretend to be rich. He just bowed to Li Ju and said, "Thank you for your kindness, sir. I remember that, when you established the joint venture association, you agreed to advance and retreat together, overcome difficulties together, and provide relief to the people. I wonder if this year's situation meets the requirements of the joint venture association for relief. If possible, I will take this task and gather everyone to contribute manpower and manpower." Li Ju said, "It has not come to this point yet. We will know the situation after the autumn harvest. I'm not helping them for nothing. It just so happens that I have started a new business and need manpower. If the disaster is really solved this time, it will be convenient for me to hire a few workers. It is the best of both worlds. Don't worry, Magistrate. If it really comes to the point where we need to advance and retreat together, I will definitely convene all the directors of the joint venture to discuss it. Since Magistrate has taken the initiative to mention this matter, I will feel confident. What else should I be afraid of?" Magistrate Wang nodded and immediately ordered people to follow the two farmers to the village. Li Ju saw that they didn't even have a pair of shoes, so he called Jetting, who was temporarily acting as a guide, to take them to pack up, and then each of them got a set of clothes, shoes, and socks to change. The two farmers, the runner sent by County Magistrate Wang, and the people who followed Li Ju asked each of them to take a bag of pickled rice made from grains and beans. If the people there were really in dire straits, they could use these sour rice balls as emergency food. If the two were lying, they would be ordered to come back immediately to report the truth. Jeteng and Gezi volunteered to follow the two farmers to the village to see for themselves. Considering that Jeteng and Gezi had an advantage in language and were both loyal backbones, Li Ju agreed. Li Ju asked the small kitchen to immediately prepare dry food and water bottles for the two of them and the runners. As they prepared, they were told to pay attention to safety along the way, carefully observe the harvest situation of the villages and farmlands outside, and report as soon as possible if they felt there was a problem. There is no need to elaborate on such things. Wu Shushan listened to Li Ju's detailed arrangements, how to take into account the face and inside of the government office, how to complete the procedures and formalities, how to deal with the local nobles, and how to carefully plan the food, drink, and accommodation for the two young men and women when they set out to other places. He even explained the things they would encounter along the way very properly, and he could not help but nod his head repeatedly. Wu Shushan envied County Magistrate Wang's good luck. He met such a good man as Li Ju during his first term as county magistrate, but there was a limit to his envy. After next year, this good luck would belong to him. So happy. The two people who came to the good man to borrow grain with courage only understood half of what they heard, but they understood two fatal things. The other party was willing to give them grain and seeds, but they had to see them in person to prevent them from lying. Their village really couldn't make ends meet, and they couldn't even find a place to sell their children. They were not afraid of people going to check the authenticity of the goods in person. In other words, the grain seeds were already set in stone and would be sent to them. The two farmers didn't know who to thank. There were 5, 6, 7, or 8 masters standing here. They hunched their backs and began to thank Li Ju, who called them the county magistrate. Their waists, which were already unable to straighten, were bent even more, almost forming a right angle, and they bowed until they were close to the ground. Everyone was used to this, and they thought it was reasonable, because they saved their lives without asking for anything in return. Li Ju looked away and left first with an excuse. Yu Yaoniang, the mute, Chu Sanlang and others, who only had eyes for Li Ju, also followed. Yu Yaoniang could feel Li Ju's emotions the most, and her intuition told her that it was not appropriate to make jokes at this time, so she inserted a small grained japonica rice ear she picked up into her bun as a decoration, revealing the demeanor of a naive little girl, and said, "Master, please don't be unhappy. You know that?" "Of course I know. The master must be unhappy to see someone living such a miserable life, and who is still by his side. Otherwise, why would the master save me, my elder brother, and Uncle Wu at that time?" But the master is only one person after all, and we can't stand on our own. One person's power is limited after all. If you see it, help. If you don't see it, just be patient. When we get out, we will naturally help others like the master. Chu Sanlang also said, Sister Yaoniang is right. The master did help them after all, and many people are saved because of the master. This is a good thing. When we get out, we will also learn to save people like the master. When the people we save become successful, we can save more people. Sooner or later, everyone can be saved. We also say in private that the master is a living bodhisattva. In the future, we should choose the master's birthday to create a festival to commemorate the master saving us. Sister Sanjiu has even thought of a name. It's called Easter. Resurrection. What the hell? You don't learn from the good, you learn from the bad. You learn slowly when you listen to lectures in class, and you are spiritual to do these things. Since you know these principles, why are you still lazy every day? Li Ju almost choked to death with his saliva. The unhappiness he felt when he saw the two poor farmers humbly thanking him just now was dispelled a lot. But, you are right to have this intention. I'm really only one person and I can't save the world. I can't even save the people in front of me. In the future, I have to rely on you, your children, apprentices, and companions. You work hard. I'm going to the barren mountain first. I have something to do. Chapter 160, Discovery of the Barren Mountain. The barren mountain is still green, but it has long been a busy scene. From afar, people can be seen coming and going on the mountain, and there is a constant stream of cars and horses. The harvest of the barren mountain and the Lee Garden began at the same time. After the harvest of the Lee Garden was finished, people had to come to support the rush harvest of the barren mountain. Li Ju hurried to the barren mountain at this time, mainly for two things. One is the harvest of the barren mountain. He always felt uneasy if he didn't keep an eye on it. The second is to see the hydraulic mule unit that was being assembled and tested. According to the feedback from the craftsman, at least it can operate normally now, but someone needs to keep an eye on it for maintenance. If what the two farmers who came to ask for help said is true, it seems very likely at present, and considering that the reduction in this year's harvest is a foregone conclusion, Li Ju feels that he can try to start a textile workshop first. Without enough food, people can hardly survive. It's enough to have a meal. Who cares about showing up in public and the separation of men and women? There are still 60 or 70 people busy harvesting on the barren mountain, and there are still not enough people. The students of Lee Yuan Academy on the other side of the river also rolled up their sleeves and joined the autumn harvest. In the end, they had to hire some temporary workers from nearby farmers to help. Li Ju came to the foot of the mountain alone, and on his horse. Someone who had seen it saw it, and immediately a local man who served livestock, the cowherd Zeng, came forward to lead the horse. Arze was not familiar with the livestock shed on this side of the barren mountain. When he smelled the scent of other mules and oxen on the cowherd Zeng, he exhaled a breath of hot air and reluctantly backed away with his neck tilted high. Li Ju then led the horse himself and said, I'm just here to take a look. I won't stay, so there's no need to take it with me. How's your harvest going? Where are Engineer He and the others? Cowherd Zeng folded his hands and replied, Engineer He tinkered with the spinning machine this morning. I think it's okay. He is harvesting corn in field number 7 now. Master, you happened to come. If you hadn't come, they would have wanted to look for you in the field. Li Ju strode towards field number 7 and asked, oh, what happened? Cowherd Zeng trotted to catch up with Li Ju and said, a small area of corn in field number 4 grows a little different from the others. I heard that the ears are generally larger. The scholar who studied biology, yes, the biology said that it may have a natural ability to resist flooding, so the seeds should be kept separately. There is such a thing. Li Ju thought carefully. Some of the seeds given to the barren mountain this year were harvested from the Lee Garden last year, and some were supplemented from the warehouse. They were planted separately to observe the output. He didn't think of mixing other varieties. If it is a natural mutation, then maybe it really has genes for flood resistance or low sunshine requirements. The student's judgment may be correct. Okay, I know. You go to work first. Thank you. The cowherd Zeng waved to Li Ju and changed his route to continue driving the cart to deliver grain to the warehouse. Li Ju first went to the number 7 plot to find He Gong, who was in charge of the mule machine, and told him to wait in the factory. He turned to the nearby number 4 plot to see what was going on. The cement road was a little wet. On both sides of the field, there were either cut rice ears and corn plants lying, or dug potatoes, sweet potatoes and peanuts drying there. The air was filled with the smell of soil and the unique smell of sap after the grass and trees were cut, which mixed into a heavy tone in the gloomy air, which was completely different from the dry and hot smell of grains and vines during the autumn harvest in previous years. Li Ju used his knowledge of meteorology to predict that the rain this autumn would never be less than that in spring. This year's subtropical high pressure was very weak and gave up the control area of the middle and lower reaches of the Yangtze River very early, which directly led to the continuous rain in the autumn, when the weather was supposed to be clear and refreshing. Predictions are predictions, but Li Ju still holds a glimmer of hope, hoping that the little goblin of the subtropical high pressure can be tough for a while, give some rebound, and raise some heat to the north. However, such damp and cold air, as well as the endless dark clouds, have clearly told Li Ju that the possibility of such a rebound is very small. This year, not only is there a problem with the harvest, but I'm afraid that firewood for the winter is also a big problem, and the honeycomb coal that has been idle for a summer should be prepared in advance. There is also the issue of refugees. Last year, there were only 2 typhoons, and some people were thinking of robbing houses. I don't know what will happen this year. Judging from the situation, the harvests in other nearby towns will not be good. It is not enough for Qingshan County to just protect itself. There are refugees who are starving nearby. They dare to fight to the death to survive. What is the point of Qingshan County staying alone? Li Ju walked to the 4th field with a lot of things in his mind. Old Huang at the head of the field and 2 students from the school were squatting on the ground writing and drawing. Seeing Li Ju coming, everyone put down their work and came forward to greet him and asked if he had any errands, etc. Old Huang and the 2 students were startled and quickly stood up to greet him. The master is here. A student said, "Master, we just said that we had to go to senior brother Yu tonight to report this matter. Coincidentally, Mr. is here in person." Another student was obviously more impatient. Seeing that his companion was not getting to the point, he became anxious and said hurriedly, "It's like this. There are 26 corn plants in this field that not only have larger ears, but are also relatively more mature, and the grains are fuller. My junior brother and I thought that the water and soil are the same, and the fertilizer is the same. The reason for such a difference should be that these 26 corn plants are different. But the seeds obviously came together, and they are probably seeds from the same ear. Only these 26 plants have inherited the mother plant's ability to resist flooding or cloudy days." The first one said again, "There are also some wind-resistant and dormant seedlings in the japonica rice fields. We also asked the harvesters to harvest them separately and prepare to send them to the school's experimental field for seedling cultivation." Li Ju felt that genetic screening of varieties was not that simple. Of course, he could not discourage the 2 teenagers, as they were the future. Therefore, Li Ju patted their shoulders to encourage them. "It's great that you can observe and think of this. Even if you find out in the future that it is not what you thought, and there is no stable genetic trait left, it doesn't matter. It's great that you can see it. I'll go back to the school and tell Mr. Yu that I will give you an extra reward today." The impatient student said, "I dare not think about rewards. This is what we should do. Otherwise, we have been studying with the teacher for so long. Wouldn't it be a waste of effort? It would be better if senior brother Yu could give us less homework. With so many of us getting together to do homework, we will use up a bowl of lamp oil in 3 days. Li Ju smiled. It can be seen that Mr. Yu was right to give us homework, otherwise you would not become successful so quickly. The teacher should give us more. After that, Li Ju picked up the corns they had picked out separately and checked them. After comparing them with the normal corns next to them, there was indeed a clear difference. Regardless of whether the difference is that the seeds are naturally high yielding, or there is a genetic mutation that is resistant to flooding, or it is an early maturing variety, it is always a good thing to see. The student's judgment was correct. These special corns are worth further study. Huang Shai and Tao, let everyone pay attention to such situations in the fields of other crops. This year is a year of general reduction in production. If there are some that are growing well, and it is not due to water, fertilizer, location, or light, then it must be related to the crops themselves. We must find such excellent crops and cultivate them. Huang Xiantao nodded repeatedly and called 2 peasant women. Together with the students, they put more than 30 ears of corn here into a basket, covered it with a lid, tied it with a rope made of corn leaves, and sent it to the house at the head of the field for storage. After collecting the corn, they said goodbye to Li Ju and went to the next field. Li Ju looked at the situation of other fields on the spot, and they were basically the same. The terrain on the mountain is a little higher, and the fertility of the fields is not very good, but it is not easy to accumulate water and rot the roots. The overall situation is still good, and the people who harvest are also very hard working. In any case, these can always survive. The other counties can only say that they have tried their best. They are beyond the scope of Li Ju's current handling. I'm afraid that this matter will eventually fall to the government. Chapter 161 Mule Machine. Li Ju took a short detour, looked at as many plots of land as possible, and then went to the workshop by the river. On both sides of the dam of the small river, several workshops have been neatly built. There are about 20 small cement and red brick bungalows, all painted white, with a few standard song-style Guanjia characters painted in red on them. Come to work happily, go home safely. No matter how many times he saw these 2 lines of words, Li Ju felt a little uncomfortable. The modern flavor is too strong, and a trance seems to have returned to the time of the old and the young. The people of Liuan like these 2 slogans very much, thinking that they speak out their voices and carry blessings for them. Going to work means having money to spend, and being safe means having the life to spend money. Isn't this everyone's most simple wish? In the house, used for the oil press workshop, the long-term workers work day and night in 3 shifts, while the house used for textiles has not yet been officially used. He and several other carpenters, blacksmiths, and plasterers who were involved in the mule machine were gathered outside the workshop, talking at once, laughing from time to time, looking like a happy occasion. As soon as Li Ju appeared, several craftsmen and apprentices stood up, some leading horses and some opening doors. He took out his cherished notebook and turned to the most recent pages, obviously ready to give an explanation. They all looked confident, and Li Ju was happy to see them, which somewhat dispelled his worries about this year's harvest. When he was in the fields just now, no need to be polite. Those who have work to do, work, and those who need to stay to talk. If it really works, everyone will get a bonus, and their share will not be omitted, just because someone is not present. He gong. It looks like good news. Carpenter he was an old man in his 50s. Perhaps because of the good family atmosphere, his parents, wife, sons, and daughters were all good. He gong had an optimism that was hard to see in the poor people of this world. He gong's family was also extremely poor. Li Ju discovered him when he came to Liuan to recommend himself to fix the doors and windows. Li Ju was impressed by He Gong's quick mind and his willingness to work, so he signed him to make the core components of the clock. Later, when it came to making the mule machine, Li Ju looked for suitable people everywhere, and after choosing and choosing, he finally chose He Gong, who had more ideas. Assembling a mule machine is not a simple matter of following the diagram. The dynamic principles and mechanical structure require people to comprehend. Li Ju himself did not understand these, and it was not easy to translate the few documents that had studied this ancient machine into the local vernacular. In the end, He Gong only got a few schematic diagrams and a rather difficult text explanation. However, Li Ju was not in a hurry to get the results, which gave He Gong enough time to think about it. If he was as anxious as Meng Gong to make the ink recipe, I'm afraid He Gong would not be able to make it. Li Ju equipped He Gong with a team of carpenters, blacksmiths, pottery, and masons, and there were a total of 14 people including the apprentices and sons of each craftsman. Among them was a girl, He Gong's daughter Yu Yaoniang. Because Yu Yaoniang was very good at ink and drawing, He Gong took his daughter with him regardless of the difference between men and women. He Gong had only this one daughter, so Yu Yaoniang vowed not to marry in order to support her parents, and said that if she wanted to get married, she had to marry a man. So now she was over 26 years old and still not promised to marry. Fortunately, Gong brought Yaoniang with him. Because the spinning machine is closely related to the craft of spinning, it will eventually fall to the action of spinning. Yaoniang herself is good at weaving and carpentry. She combined her own practice with the text description and drawings given by Li Ju to sort out and disassemble the various parts so that they can be built and assembled separately. The final result is a large spinning machine with the characteristics of the Central Plains Han culture. Just like the 2 lines of slogans painted outside, it seems a bit out of tune with this world. Yaoniang dressed as a man and introduced the Liu and mule machine with her father. From time to time, she even controlled the spindle machine to demonstrate the method of twisting yarn to Li Ju. It can be seen that she really put in a lot of effort and was not just a relative who followed her father's work to get credit. After demonstrating the first mule loom, Yaoniang said in a hoarse voice, "In terms of efficiency, it is more than 100 times higher than the current spinning machines. Some minor problems are no longer a problem. For example, it is easy to damage and needs frequent maintenance. For example, after the spinning is broken, the yarn needs to be connected as soon as possible. But these are not a problem. In the future, our spinning and weaving will be many times faster. In the future, everyone will have clothes to wear, and we can also apply tung oil to make oilcloth, so that everyone can have an umbrella to shelter from the wind and rain. Those poor families who can't afford tiles and bricks, when it rains and blows, the house is windy and rainy. I don't know how many people have frozen to death. In the future, they can use cheap oilcloth." Gong said with a little flattery. "Everyone says that the master is the god of agriculture. In our opinion, the master is more than just the god of agriculture. As the saying goes, the parents of food and clothing, the master is responsible for both food and clothing. Both things are taken care of by you, old man." Li Jiu scratched his ear. "What was handed down by our ancestors, and what you copied, is to reward according to merit. The first to be rewarded is the elders of my family, and the second to be rewarded is not you. I just passed on the wisdom of my ancestors to you, and I really dare not take credit. Speaking of which, Yaoniang, you just said that in the future, there will be more cloth, so that everyone can wear clothes, and it can also be made into tung oil cloth for use. Have you ever thought that, if there is too much cloth, it will be worthless, and what will happen to those who make a living by weaving cloth outside?" Yaoniang said, "My shallow opinion, there are many people in the world who can't wear clothes, and many people can weave cloth by themselves, but can't wear clothes. It can be seen that it is not that the cloth is too expensive, that so many people can't afford clothes, but that the cloth is too little, so that even if they have money, they have nowhere to buy it, not to mention that everyone has no money. Isn't it a good thing that the price of cloth is reduced?" Li Jiu smiled and didn't say anything. He didn't know how the future would develop, but he thought that more people could be absorbed into the primary mechanized factories. That would be good. Anyway, there would be factories, so that people would not starve to death, and with workers who were separated from the land, they would soon develop corresponding awareness. If we have enough craftsmen, how long will it take you to make a mule machine like this? Starting from selecting the materials, it will take about half a month for a carpenter and blacksmith to make one, but it will take 3 days to assemble it. After all, it is driven by water conservancy and needs to be connected to the canal brought by the master. Li Ju nodded, slid his hand on the yarn in the mule machine, and said, "Okay, you build a few more. No one is prepared this year, and raw materials such as cotton, linen, and wool should be in short supply, so it's okay to have 1 or 2 running around to show people, but the situation next year will definitely change, so your top priorities are 3 things. First, equip the craftsmen to make the mule machine. How many people are needed? Tell me the list and I'll go recruit them. Second, you need to teach a group of long-term workers who can use and maintain the mule machine. Both male and female workers are required. Third, write an instruction manual that anyone can understand, with clear pictures and clear text. Mr. He should have an instruction manual for watches." After getting a positive answer from Gong, Li Ju said, "Write the manual for the mule machine in the format of the instruction manual for watches. The mule machine will be sent to other places for use in the future, and we can't let you run around with it. Having an instruction manual can save a lot of trouble." Let's do it this way. Do you have any questions? He Gong and others agreed one after another, and Yu Yaoniang raised her hand high. Master, I have something to say. Chapter 162. Write her name. Yu Yaoniang is a somewhat peculiar woman. Perhaps because she is an only child and is doted on by her parents, there is no avoidance or retreat in her dealings with others. If she wants to do something, she will definitely try it, regardless of whether it is feasible in the eyes of the world. Li Ju was a little surprised that the first person in Daeang who made a request to him was the daughter of a craftsman who would be looked down upon in this era. He said, "You say?" Yu Yaoniang said, "I want to lead a group to make this spinning machine alone. I will not make spinning machines in the future. I want to lead people to manage the operation of at least 2 spinning machines." Li Ju said, "Yes, as long as you can pass the examination required by the duties of this position. In the future, these rooms will be used for mule loom weaving. According to the number of manpower, 3 shifts of foremen will be equipped. Each shift has a certain number of people and a team leader, and every 3 shifts have a group leader. The positions of team leaders and group leaders will be open to the outside world, and those who are capable will take up the positions. If you meet the requirements, you will naturally be allowed to lead this group." Yu Yaoniang was very confident and couldn't help but smile generously. What she wanted was more than just a team leader or a group leader. Yu Yaoniang clearly felt that Li Ju would recruit female workers, which would itself cause a lot of suspicion and rumors. Therefore, the female workers recruited would most likely work separately from the male workers. Then the foreman and group leader of the female workers would naturally be women. Even the people who were in charge of the entire textile workshop would most likely be selected from these group leaders. Since Li Ju promised that only capable people would be promoted, and she could weave, make mule looms, and repair mule looms, why couldn't she be promoted? Even if the world did not allow women to come forward, and did not allow craftsmen to have status, why couldn't she try to change it? Yu Yaoniang's ambition was aroused all of a sudden. Li Ju added, "I will not interfere too deeply in the affairs of the workshop." What is considered qualified? A qualified team leader is one who can eliminate most of the mechanical failures, lead his partners well, and keep the spinning volume at the forefront. What is considered as being able to eliminate failures and how to lead partners well is left for you to figure out. As for the time, there is no need to do it too early. Decide on the personnel of the 4 teams before the end of September. Note that each team has 3 shifts, so the number of staff is at least 3 times the number of people on duty at the same time. This matter will be handed over to Engineer He. You will be in charge. Engineer He quickly agreed, and then under the eager gaze of his partners, he asked carefully, "Master, then, have we completed the mule machine?" Of course. Li Ju knew what he really wanted to ask. The bonus is in full, a total of 600 cash. You discuss how to divide it. Write down on a piece of paper how much bonus each person should get for what they have done, and hand it to Steward Wu. If I think there is no problem, I will go to the accounting office to withdraw the money. The sooner the better. It would be best to get it done today. If I have checked it on the spot and think there is no problem, I can drag the money over tomorrow. In this way, you don't have to bother running back and forth to my house. I'm afraid it will take a few days to send the money. Mr. He didn't expect this to happen, so he looked at his daughter's face carefully again. Yu Yaoniang had a calculation in mind, but she was afraid that Li Ju had already taken a partiality, so she asked on behalf of her father, "To be honest, sir, this is the first time for all of us to divide the money together. We have never divided it before, and the master always gave £1 to the apprentice. I wonder if the sir has any ideas to teach us? Of course, it's distribution according to work. The more effort you put in, the more money you get. Whoever solves the key problem and does more work should get more money. But even the person who puts in the least effort should have his share of the bonus." Li Ju drew a few grids on the wooden board, where they drew the draft drawings, and wrote down the weighting method of work scoring in the future. Yu Yaoniang understood it immediately and quickly grasped the essence. She listed all the difficulties encountered in the restoration of the entire mule machine below, and then moved them one by one to the grid above according to their importance. Everyone was very clear about what they had done, but they had different ideas about which things were more important and more difficult, and they started a lively discussion. Li Ju listened for a while, but couldn't get a word in. Seeing that they were discussing very seriously, it would not end in a short time. Seeing that it was already late, he turned around and went out to prepare to go to the kitchen to get some food and brought dinner to several craftsmen. Facts have proved that the power of money is really important to extremely poor people. Although it was the first time for several craftsmen to come into contact with such a modern concept as weighted algorithm, they also made a distribution plan within 2 hours that basically made everyone speechless. It was almost the evening hour. In order to wait for this plan, Li Ju did not return to Lee Garden. He chatted with several farmers and the 2 biology students on the edge of the grain drying field on the barren mountain. He Gong and others handed over the distribution paper with hope, but they were a little uneasy. It's not that they don't trust Li Ju, but they are afraid that the cooked duck will fly away. If there is no bonus, it doesn't matter, they won't think about it. But if the promised bonus is not in their pocket, there will be a problem. If it is gone, they will regret it to death, so the sooner the better. Li Ju took a quick look at the list. He didn't understand what was listed there. As long as everyone thought it was okay, then it was okay. He was not the kind of ours who would make trouble out of nothing, and he would not force others to do a task that was impossible to complete. Just go and collect the money according to this. I will go back to my family early tomorrow morning and ask them to send the money in the morning. But Li Ju crossed out the list of more than a dozen people, and the long-tailed tone made everyone's heart hang in the air. Why is Mr. He's daughter not on the list? Everyone felt relieved again. It would be good if he didn't regret it. He Gong said, in reply to the master, my daughter's share is included in my share. Several things under my name, such as disassembling the spinning wheel, connecting the hydraulic power, and polishing the spindle interface, are all related to my daughter, so my daughter's bonus is also included in mine. Li Ju said, why not list it separately? He Gong said, women don't get money. My brothers, because of my daughter's agility, gave me a little face, so I got an extra share, including Yu Yaoniang's share. If you calculate carefully, it is in line with the background of Daang's era. If you talk about it in detail, it involves a series of trivial socio-economic contents such as women's identity, dowry, property rights, etc. Li Ju glanced at Yu Yaoniang. She looked calm. Obviously, even if she had the ambition to challenge the rules of this world, she also acquiesced that she could not participate in the distribution of the accounts at this moment. Li Ju folded the paper with the plan written on it and handed it to Yu Yaoniang. Madam He's bonus list is clearly written to be hers. Judging from the several major events under He Gong's name, He Gong did put in a lot of work and gave a lot of meaningful ideas. It is not in vain that he gets the current bonus. There is also a share for Yu Yaoniang in this bonus. In fact, both father and daughter took less. Maybe in order to reach an agreement as soon as possible, He Gong sacrificed a little of his own interests. Li Ju did not intend to indulge their calculations, but he did not want to take more from other people's shares. He just said, withdraw an additional bonus of 20 taels of silver to Madam He. You have been working on equipment in the barren mountains for many years, and you probably don't know that the female workers in Lee Garden can manage their own money. Madam Zhao and Yumizi have their own industries. The same goes for Madam He. On the territory of the Li family, women can get the houses, land, money, and things that they deserve. The same will apply to the division of accounts in the future. Do you have any objections? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 163, Autumn Harvest ends. New problems emerge. When Yu Yaoniang heard that women could have their own businesses, she couldn't help but smile even brighter. Those who were smart immediately jumped up and said, Master, I have a daughter-in-law who is very good at weaving. If you are recruiting workers, maybe my daughter-in-law will sign up. Everyone was calculating quickly. If a person can get 1 tael of silver when working in Lee Garden, and the daughter-in-law can also get a little when working. The two of them can get about 1 TL or 3 coins together. Such an income is enough to make people grateful, but since the master said that women can get a separate share, then the daughter-in-law of their family can get the same salary as men when they work, which is 2 TLs of silver. According to the salary given by Lee Garden, as long as they can come in, it is conservatively 2 TLs of silver per month, and 4 TLs for 2 people, which is better than staying at home. Lee Garden rarely recruits long-term workers who have a family and a business. Except for these skilled craftsmen, the long-term workers in Lee Garden are all poor homeless people picked up on the roadside. Even for skilled jobs, Lee Ju would give priority to the poor who could not survive. Only when there were really no poor people who met the requirements would it be the turn of these craftsmen who could still make a living. Now Lee Ju obviously wanted to expand the textile workshop and was in urgent need of manpower. Since it was urgently needed, there would be some vacancies that could not be filled, and they would fall on those of them who had a small fortune. There was another important factor they had to consider. The terrifying efficiency of the mule loom was simply incredible. As long as Lee Yuan had 10 or 8 mule looms, he could buy all the homespun cloth in Kingshan County. How could their families, wives and daughters who relied on manual spinning machines compare with these rumbling mule looms? On the one hand, they could earn more money. On the other hand, the opportunity was rare. And on the other hand, the future was clear. If they didn't strike while the iron was hot and bring in their wives and children, what were they waiting for? Lee Ju calculated the manpower needs and said, yes, your immediate relatives, that is, your parents, wives, children, and daughters, can all sign up. As long as they meet the requirements, they will be hired. These days, the farming season is busy. When the grain is stored in the warehouse, we will start recruiting workers. Everyone who heard this was overjoyed, especially the craftsmen, who seemed to have seen the future wages coming in continuously. The next day, Lee Ju got up early in the morning, did all the daily chores such as washing and morning exercises, and walked around the yard where the grain was dried. Seeing that everything was fine, he returned to Lee Garden first, asked Wang Dechen to withdraw 620 TLs of money, and ordered people to escort him all the way to the barren mountain to distribute it to Hegong and others according to the number of people. After Lee Ju returned to Lee Garden, he first went to Wang Dechen. In addition to withdrawing money, he also had to take care of the recruitment of workers. The requirements for recruiting people were proposed by Hegong and others, but the people must be uniformly approved and registered by Wang Dechen. After explaining everything to Wang Dechen asked, I've taken note of the master's affairs. But, since I've been the accountant for the master all my life, I shouldn't hide anything from the master, right? Lee Ju said, just tell me what you want to ask. I want to know how much property the master has left. The mountain workshop the master is running now is just breaking even, so every year the food and clothing for us, the bonuses the master gives to the craftsmen, the money and grain for road construction and donations, and the management of interpersonal relationships are all paid by the master himself, at least 3 to 5,000 TLs of silver a year. Looking at the situation, I'm afraid that in the future, even if the cloth and grain are produced, the master will not use them to make money. So I, and the housekeeper, have to do the math, and then I'm very worried about the master's family background. We don't want to leave, or we despise the poor, and love the rich. There are ways to live in poverty and ways to spend money in wealth. There must be a number, so that people can be at peace. Lee Ju's heart moved, and he quickly scanned the huge storage center in the alien space. He focused on gold, silver, copper, cloth, grain, and ready-made clothes. There were many other things that could be sold, but it was much more difficult to calculate the value. Lee Ju only had an approximate number, not very detailed. After calculating the accounts, Lee Ju said, don't worry. It's also my fault that I didn't tell you clearly. 3 to 5,000 TLs a year, even if there is only expenditure and no income, it can at least be used for 20 years. This is just cash. Those agates, jades, rare treasures have never been checked, so there must be more. Is the accountant relieved? Wang Dechen immediately calculated in his mind and smiled. A person's life is only a few decades, and I still want to live a good life with the master. Don't blame me for thinking too much. Li Ju also laughed and said, I just paid out 600 taels. As an accountant, if you are not frightened, you are incompetent. In a few days, when the autumn harvest is over, and the rapeseed is planted, the road construction will continue, and the money will flow again. If I didn't know my worth, I would be worried, and unable to sleep at night. I can't blame you for thinking too much. Besides, you will marry a wife, and have children in the future. When you have a family, having a lot of money is one way of life, and having less money is another. If you make plans based on having a lot of money, you will not be able to make ends meet in the future, so you should have asked this question. Wang Dechen thought of his plan to get married, and the smile on his face was a little shy. Li Ju guessed what he was thinking. He didn't say it, and Li Ju didn't point it out. He turned around and called the mute to go to the warehouse to count the goods together, preparing to send a batch of goods to the dyeing and weaving Chen and Laoliu. The harvest this year was difficult, so it was better to prepare early. He had to exchange some loose change. The autumn harvest lasted for about 7 or 8 days. Because it rained for several days in between, the millet was gathered and spread out, but it was not dried in the end. In the end, Li Ju had to spend money to buy firewood to dry it before it could be stored in the warehouse. Other farmers in Qingshan County watched Li Yuan harvest. Some felt that they were not as good at farming as Li Ju, so they harvested without thinking about it. Others hoped that the crops would grow longer, and they always held on to the fluke, thinking that this little rain was nothing, so they still waited for a few days. As a result, as soon as Li Yuan finished harvesting, it immediately rained for half a month. The rain was not heavy, but it kept falling. I don't know how much grain was rotten in the fields, and I don't know how many people got cold and fell ill because of the cold in the rain. County Magistrate Wang went to the nearby villages and towns for inspection every few days. Looking at the situation in the fields, he was so anxious that blisters grew on his lips. The situation near the county town was not bad. Because of the business exchanges, every household had other livelihoods, so they would not be penniless because of the failure to collect enough grain in the autumn harvest. Looking at the villages farther away, we know that people outside are even more difficult. Jeteng and others who followed the 2 farmers who borrowed grain came back. They took a slight detour and visited 7 or 8 villages along the way. The situation they saw was almost comparable to that of a year of minor disasters. Jeteng and Gizi returned to Li Garden. Without time to eat or wash, they hurried to find Li Ju to report what they saw and heard in the villages outside. Jeteng looked serious, and Li Ju guessed from their expressions. Are they telling the truth? Jeteng said, it's true, the actual situation is worse than what they said. When we arrived at King Niu village, all the elderly people in those families, whose fields were flooded, had died. They didn't want to burden their families, so they went up the mountain together to commit suicide. The fields are still soaked in water, and it is very difficult to replant some vegetables. Gizi added, Master, what should we do? So many people can't even eat a bite of food. How can we save them? Although our family's production has decreased, it looks like a bumper harvest to outsiders. Last year, when everyone was still able to make ends meet, there were thieves and robbers. This year, Chapter 164 Miracles vs. Atheists. Jiangnan is a prosperous place. The entire county town of Qingshan and the nearby villages add up to 60,000 people. According to the data, that this year's harvest is only about 60% to 70%, and if we add in the people who are already struggling to survive, at least 40% of them will be threatened with death. If we only consider life and death, regardless of health, and each person consumes at least 1 or 2 taels of grain per day, that is 2,000 kilograms of grain, 2,000 kilograms per day. From today until the first wave of wild vegetables is harvested in spring, it will take another 7 or 8 months. This is a hole that can only be filled with 400,000 kilograms of grain. Li Ju asked, have you told the county magistrate about the situation in King Niu village? Jeteng replied, we didn't tell him, but the runners sent by the county magistrate have been with us all the way. Now that the runners have returned to the government office, they will surely report to the magistrate. Li Ju said, that's good. You can go back and rest first. This trip is considered a business trip. I will give you a few days off next. Have a good rest. It won't be long before there are tough battles to fight. After sending the two children away, Li Ju called the mute to count the inventory on the whiteboard in the warehouse building. This warehouse on the surface of Li Yuan is just an empty shell, with only temporary things stored inside to cover it up. The mute's residence is on the left hand side of the door. The mute's room is a 1-bedroom and 1 living room layout. Opposite are 2 unused empty rooms, which are symmetrical with the mute's room, like 2 small suites. Between the small suites is a structure similar to a flower hall, which contains some necessities, such as fire blankets, fire extinguishers, and carts for carrying things. The whiteboard that Li Ju used to write the calculation problem was in this small hall. The south-facing windows were covered with curtains to prevent people from peeking, so the light in the whole hall was very dim. The white paint used on the whiteboard was not of very good quality, and there was no reflection at all. Li Ju didn't care much. He stretched out his hand and wrote a few headings, then handed the charcoal pencil to the mute. He dictated and the mute copied. The warehouse that Li Ju brought from the modern world is one of the large transit warehouses radiating the entire East China region. About 1.3 million tons of grain are transferred from this warehouse every day. In fact, including grains, there is only more grain in the warehouse. At first glance, this can easily solve the food crisis in Qingshan County. But how does Li Ju explain the source of food? Li Ju has been promoting the cultivation of modern grain varieties, just to make plans for the future. According to his external statement, it was his elders who left him a rich fortune in food, so it was reasonable for him to take out food. But the food he took out was new food, which was unreasonable. How can the elders go for 2 years and still leave new food? In order to provide a reasonable source of new grain for the warehouse, he had to use the harvest of the current year to cover up the offset. He originally planned to slowly take over a few barren hills, plant grain to cover up, and then sell the extra part privately at a low price, so that he could convert tens of thousands of kilograms of grain from the warehouse every year. However, this year, it was seen that there would be hundreds of thousands of kilograms of extra grain for no reason, which was not so easy to deal with. Li Ju reported a number, and the mute filled in a number on the whiteboard, listing the fields, wasteland, gaps, income, etc. one by one on it, adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing, and operating like a tiger. This year's gap and next year's plan were all calculated. Li Ju looked at the final deficit and said, if we report this year as a disaster year, the court should be able to allocate a sum of grain. Let's count it as 100,000 catties of coarse grain according to the previous example. There are still 300,000 catties of life-saving grain here. I can take it out, but how can I explain the source of this grain? Did I buy it from other places? The mute shook his head and wrote on the whiteboard, there is no introduction from merchants. Yes, if you want to wrestle grain on such a large scale, you must have the endorsement of the government. Those grain stores are all licensed and have certificates to work. Li Ju carefully allocated 50,000 catties from the 300,000 catties. Let Lao Chen and Lao Liu find a way to make a legal and reasonable source for the 50,000 catties of grain. It will work if it works. In addition to the grain shipped from other places, this year Li Ju can also take out some old grain in the warehouse and say it is the family foundation. But there is really not much old grain in the warehouse, only about 30,000 catties in total. Even if Li Ju mixes some coarse grains in it, he can only get 60,000 catties at most. There were still 190,000 left. Even if Li Ju stared through the whiteboard, he couldn't come up with a legal proof. The mute looked around and hesitantly wrote 2 words, miracle. Li Ju was an atheist, a 24K pure materialist, and a staunch Marxist. When he was joking in his daily life, he would worship the gods of grain, Yuan Langping, Li Zhensheng, and Li Denghe, the ancestors of air conditioners, and the father of electromagnetism, but he didn't believe in the illusory heart. Even if he traveled through time, he was still the same Li Ju. Therefore, when he saw the word miracle, he couldn't help laughing. There is no God in the world, and who can believe in miracles? The mute wrote again, the master is God. Li Ju twisted his mouth and wiped out the 5 words. There is no God in the world. Only man can conquer nature. I'm not a god either. The master is an ordinary person, but there is a very powerful condensate behind the master, who gave the master these things. They let me come here fight with you, and tell you how to create the future with your own hands. But, do you really believe this? The mute plucked up the courage to write such a sentence to Li Ju on behalf of all the people in Li Garden, but it was directly wiped out by Li Ju. If he was a sentimental person, his heart would probably be broken into 8 pieces. Fortunately, he was not, so he could only secretly sigh that Master Li did good things without taking credit for them, and was indeed a good master. He wrote on the whiteboard, "I will believe it, there is no way out, pray to God." Li Ju looked at the last 4 words, thinking, and finally said, "Write down the final conclusion for me, and erase the one on the board." After coming out of the warehouse, Li Ju went back to his room, and changed into clothes for meeting guests. He jumped on the railing to the wall of the courtyard, and then climbed onto the top of the wall, and shouted to the courtyard of Mr. Huang next door, "Feng, Feng, are you at home? I have something to discuss with you." How could Mr. Huang not be at home? He was still busy urging Wu Shusheng and others to proofread the dictionary. As long as the dictionary was not published, he had no mood to go out for fun. He spent the whole day wandering around in his own and Li's study. Hearing Li Ju calling him, Huang Zhi poked his head out from behind the window of the study close to Li Garden. "I'm here. Can you please leave in peace? You keep jumping over walls every day." Fortunately, my family doesn't have a girl of the right age. Otherwise, with all the rumors, you would have asked for 10 concubines long ago. Li Ju then took a step over the walls of the 2 houses, and then supported himself from the wall of Huang's house, and landed in the garden of Huang's family. Huang Zhi came out in a hurry. "I thought you shouldn't come today. Aren't your grains not harvested yet? Why are you here suddenly?" To make a long story short, Jeteng and Gizzy are back. They saw that the autumn harvest outside was very bad. This year, it is definitely not just King Niu village that can't survive due to food shortages. I think this matter is very serious. Brother is a smart man, and he knows the local situation better than me. He is better at making decisions than me, so I must discuss it with you. Chapter 165, Li Ju and Huang Zhi's income account. After listening to Li Ju's retelling of the situation in King Niu village and other villages, Mr. Huang's face was very solemn. It sounds like, even if it's not as bad as the harvest failure more than 10 years ago, it's very serious. It's not just a food shortage, but also a series of things that food shortages will cause. Refugees, robbers, next year's farming, the trade of merchants. One move affects the whole body. I will go to find County Magistrate Zhao to inform him of the situation. At the latest tomorrow, I must discuss this matter with the county magistrate. The county magistrate should have known about it. He sent officials to the countryside to check it out. I forgot this. Then what are we waiting for? Let's go to the government office together. The county magistrate has been very anxious these days because he is worried about the harvest. I guess he is also waiting for reports from the surrounding villages. Let's make plans early so that we can have a response. Li Ju said, "Wait a minute, this is exactly why I came to visit my brother. If I just ask my brother to go to the government office together, wouldn't it be enough for me to ask someone to ask my brother to go to the county magistrates together? This matter is tricky to talk about. Let's sit down and talk in detail." Huang Zhi said, "Oh, Oklahoma, sit down. I'll ask the kitchen to prepare some tea." Li Ju had been struggling with whether to let outsiders know about his special plugin, but later he found that he couldn't keep it secret. There was no other reason. It was still caused by low productivity. For example, the food problem that troubled him this time. It would not be difficult to compile more than 100,000 kilograms of food in the future. It would only take 100 acres of land, and logistics and population could digest it in a very short time. This increase would be spread over such a large world, and it would only be a 1/10,000th fluctuation. But it wouldn't work in Dayang. 100,000 kilograms of food was the output of at least 500 acres of arable land in Dayang. It sounds like it's only 5 times more, but the amount of arable land in Dayang is less than a quarter of the future, and the manpower required per acre is higher than in the future. The time and manpower required to transport these 100,000 kilograms of food are not comparable to the future world. In a short period of time, Li Ju had no way to provide a reasonable source for materials that exceeded a certain level. Cloth, seeds, clocks, and jewelry can all be inherited from the family, but there is always a limit to family inheritance. The recluse place mentioned by Li Ju is just a piece of forest. How much can be hidden is obvious. Not to mention other issues such as old grain and new grain. The mute knew the real situation a long time ago, which only made him respect Li Ju more. Originally, Li Ju opened a chicken feather house to collect people for free during the winter. He was a very good person and his savior. He should respect him. Later, the mute gradually discovered Li Ju's secret. With his cognition, it was difficult for him to understand what time travel was and what portable space was. He only knew that Master Li could take things from a distance like the legendary gods, and the things he took were endless, and they seemed to be all treasures from the fairy world. Master Li, who was originally a great good man, had an extra layer of divine light on him, and the mute could not speak. The characters he learned in the first year of Li Garden were not enough for him to communicate with the outside world without obstacles. By the second year, the mute had already devoted himself to Li Ju. The situation of the mute gave Li Ju a little more confidence in the people of Dayang, so he did not deliberately avoid Dying and Weaving Chen later. Dying and Weaving Chen more or less guessed that Li Ju's heirlooms were a bit mythical. If Li Ju didn't tell him, he wouldn't ask. Not only that, he didn't tell anyone else, including his wife and children. Not only that, in order to make Li Ju feel at ease, he would let his wife and children bring their own property to live in Li Garden when he went out to do business. In Dayang, in ancient times, men and women were strictly separated. Even brothers might not dare to do this. At most, they would ask the brothers' wives to take care of their families. Unless the family was not divided, no one would let the women live in the house of an unmarried brother. But Dying and Weaving Chen dared to do it. Dying and Weaving Chen was one of the people who made it to the top 30% in this world. Dying and Weaving Chen's trust and reliability undoubtedly gave Li Ju great encouragement, making him willing to take a key step and let Wang Zhi know more. Li Ju said, "I calculated for our county. If every village is like those villages, and the grain production is reduced by 30% to 40% this year, then there will be a gap of 300,000 jin of grain until the next spring grain catches up." Wang Zhi, who was a little nervous just now, slowed down his movements after hearing this calculation. "Wait a minute, if you calculate it this way, I'm afraid there's no need to worry." Huang Zhi calculated on paper and said, "It's not that big of a gap. Our county originally had a granary. I heard that there were still 300,000 jin of grain in stock last year. Last year was a bumpy year, and there must be new grain in the granary. I'm conservative, and the number should be 200,000. After Huang Zhi finished speaking, he pointed to the numbers he wrote and explained them to Li Ju one by one. Qingshan County has a total of about 80,000 mu of arable land. Because of the unique water source and good soil fertility, there are 30,000 upper fields, 50,000 middle fields, and 20,000 lower fields. This is the part that has been registered, not including the part that has just been opened up and has not been included in the official books. Regardless of whether it is coarse grain or refined grain, these 80,000 mu of land should be able to produce 20 million catties of grain in a normal year. After paying taxes, county revenue and county fiscal expenditures, there should be more than 10 million catties left, and about 4 million catties will be left for people to eat on their own, and the rest will be sold and purchased. Relying on these 20 million catties of grain, the people of Qingshan County can dance on the survival line of just making ends meet every year, and they are still rich. The granaries built by the court in various places will collect some grain every year and exchange some old grain, if there is any. The granaries in Qingshan County have always been good. Last year's bumper harvest should have pushed the inventory of the granaries to a high level of 200,000 to 300,000 catties. This year, based on a 30% to 40% reduction in production, it is estimated that the grain income will be around 13 million catties. According to the rules, the court will reduce taxes and allocate the stored grain in the Huainan warehouse for relief. The court is now collecting 15% tax. When it comes to the county, plus the county's fiscal revenue and corvée and miscellaneous items, about 20% to 30% will be collected. After some reductions, it can be maintained at about 10%. With the grain allocated by the court, the grain left in the county will generally be the same as in previous years. Even if the production decreases a little more, there is no need to worry. The grain stored in the government warehouse is enough to feed the people of the county until the situation improves next year. Li Ju didn't know such detailed data. Hearing this, he felt happy and could keep the secret of the warehouse for a while. Huang Zhi smiled and said, I have to thank you for teaching me the counting method. The account books in the past were not so easy to calculate. Now, as long as you can recognize the numbers, you can spread them out and calculate them almost accurately. It was with this method that we Qingshan people realized that this county is really a good place and the county magistrate is indeed a good county magistrate. Apart from other things, 80,000 acres of farmland have 30,000 acres of good paddy fields, and the government office only collects 30% of the taxes. It is really rare to have one of these two things. Li Ju scratched his head and smiled innocently. With the numbers on this form as a backup, he asked Chen, the dyeing and weaving company, and Lao Liu to prepare the source of 50,000 kilograms of grain, and mixed another batch of grain into the old grain, and the matter would be done. However, as he watched, he figured out some problems. There are 3 problems that I'm not very reassured about. First, whether the production will decrease by 30% or 40% this year is unknown. As far as King Niu village is concerned, the low-lying and poorly drained areas are completely wiped out. There is no way that there is only one such village, King Niu village. I wonder how many there are. Second, in other counties near us, the entire Hualien road has been rainy all year round, while Lingnan road has been dry for half a year. Is the grain in these places similar to ours? Is there a possibility that they will become refugees and robbers because of the more severe reduction in production? For example, last year, Li Xiang couldn't stand the hunger after 2 typhoons and ran out to rob houses. I still feel scared when I think about it now. The third is the granary. The people involved in the grain business in our county are the Huang family, and the granary is the county magistrate's favorite, so he can naturally control it. I still believe it. But combined with the second point, can the granaries in these places around us be trusted? Huang Zhi couldn't help but fall into deep thought after hearing this. After a while, he raised his head and smiled. Your question makes sense. I'm also panicked by what you said. Why don't we go to the county magistrates to discuss it? I'm a well-known local person, you are a warm-hearted person, and you have so many joint ventures in your hands. It is legitimate for us to ask. There is no time to lose. Why not do it in the afternoon? Li Ju said. Okay. Brother, hand over the invitation. I will ask the kitchen to send over the food, and we will leave after eating. Chapter 166. The people who got on the car helped you hide it. Huang Zhi followed Li Ju to eat in Li Yuan's small kitchen. The braised pork ribs and fermented duck were fresh and delicious. Huang Zhi was happy to eat, even though he had something on his mind. After the meal, he took a jar of Li Yuan's famous specialty, pickled crabs, tied it with red cloth, and tied a knot, and took it to Zhao County Magistrate's mansion to discuss it with Lao Zhao. In theory, it was not Li Ju and Huang Zhi's turn to care about or intervene in the political affairs of Qingshan County, but their transcendent status determined that they had the obligation and power to intervene in matters related to people's livelihood. After hearing the purpose of the 2 men's visit, County Magistrate Zhao welcomed them to his small study to sit down and drink tea, and said, I expected that you must have this matter, but I didn't know when you would bring it up. It's not too late. Wait a few days for the rice to be stored in the warehouse. If you don't come, I will have to go to your house to find you 2 gentlemen. Li Ju was the youngest among the 3 people, so he took the initiative to speak and said, so, it seems that the county magistrate also knows the situation outside. 1 porridge and 1 meal, at the smallest, is my own future and livelihood, and at the largest, it is for the people. I should keep it in mind every year. The county magistrate and I also know the situation this year. The Yamen runner who went to King Niu village has not come out of the county government yet. County Magistrate Zhao sighed slightly, and then smiled and said, you all came together, I guess you have a plan. Huang Zhi said, you originally thought that our county was short of 300,000 catties of grain, and he immediately came to me for advice. I told him that it was not that serious, and our regulated grain was not rotting in the warehouse for nothing. But there were a few things that worried him, and I didn't know them, so I had to come to you for advice. Boxiu, you tell me first. Liu responded, and then he told the county magistrate in detail the numbers he had calculated today, and the 3 hidden worries, along with the whole story. County Magistrate Zhao smiled and said, "You are so enthusiastic, that's great. You can rest assured, as long as there is no total harvest, our county will take care of it. In the worst case, people should not starve to death." Last year, I personally supervised the collection of the official warehouse. This year, since the continuous rain in the spring, I have been checking every few days, fearing that someone has embezzled it, or that it has been improperly stored and moldy, or that it has been harmed by snakes, insects, rats and ants. I went there the day before yesterday, and it was fine. After laughing, County Magistrate Zhao calmed down a little, but your worries are also my worries. As for the granaries in our county, since the adults have been very careful, Lao Chen and I always go to inspect them, and will not allow them to cheat, so you can rest assured. But I don't know about other places. Last year, someone rioted, and the county magistrate ignored the obstruction and etiquette, and wrote a letter to question the Yu County magistrate. It can be seen that at least Yu County cannot control people. 2 typhoons smashed the land into pieces, but a few rains and 2 days of wind will only affect a few hundred acres of crops. Sound, such small disasters. Which year does our county not encounter several times? Yu County actually let Yu Yaoniang, or thief, gather dozens of people, and flee all the way to Qingshan. It can be seen that the locals can't bear any disasters. Not only can they not bear it, but even other places in Yu County are probably struggling in dire straits. This is why even the robbers look down on Yu County's wealth. Then I have to ask, do Yu County and other counties in Huaijia, Nanshan and other counties have grain reserves, and how big a gap can they cope with? Who dares to guarantee? Who knows? Huang Zhi nodded and agreed, that's right. Last year was actually a good year. However, I heard that the local farmers in Yu not only failed to get a good price, but could only sell the grain at a low price. The cash in their hands was only 70% to 80% of that in previous years. I saw that the rent and cash sent by the tenants were not the same, so I asked a few more questions and found out that the grain stores in Yu County and Nanking County said that the market price was like this. If we don't sell it to them at a low price, no one in the whole Jiangnan will dare to buy their grain. The farmers are in a hurry to sell their grain. Is there any other way? I have no choice but to endure their price cuts. The grain stores are so greedy that they openly violate the imperial price regulations, but no one dares to intervene. There must be corrupt officials involved. How can the government warehouses be preserved? So when Boxiu mentioned the situation of the granary, I, like you, dare not guarantee the quality of the government warehouses. This year, the reduction in production in Jiangnan is a foregone conclusion. The only difference is how much. If there are problems with the government warehouses in Huaijia, Nanshan and other places, our county will not be able to stay out of it. So how can we protect ourselves? County Magistrate Zhao said, in previous years. Alas, in previous years there was no official as good as the county magistrate. None of those officials managed people so meticulously, and none of them took people's lives so seriously. County Magistrate Zhao couldn't help getting excited as he spoke. Mr. Huang coughed, pulling him out of his indignation in previous years. County Magistrate Zhao realized that he shouldn't be so straightforward, and quickly changed his words. It is also the blessing of our county magistrate. Since the county magistrate came, our county has always had good weather and good harvests. It was not until this year that we have had the same feeling as in previous years with no major disasters, but constant minor disasters. The county magistrate originally thought of the old practice of keeping a tight watch on the 8-month supply of food stored in the official warehouse, and with the tax reduction and exemption by the court, they would be able to survive the natural disaster safely. But if there is a problem with the official warehouses in Huaijia and other places, causing the people to become refugees and wander around, or if the reduction in revenue is so severe that the official warehouses cannot be used to fill the gap, Then apart from asking the court for grain, no other solution has been considered. What do you two think? Li Ju said, I don't have any other solution. But I think my road is not finished yet, and it is still some distance from connecting to the county seat. What's more, I also want to build the roads from the county seat to Xianan Port, the county seat to Jinling, the county seat to Kaiantang, and the county seat to Gusu. At the same time, my newly opened workshop needs manpower, and the gap is not small. In the end, I need manpower, and they need food. It's really time to need the local wealthy merchants and landlords to donate generously, otherwise, we can use work instead of relief. County Magistrate Zhao laughed again. How much grain will you give for this relief? 100,000 katas? 1 million katas? I guess you can take out this number, but you can't tell others, right? Huang Zhi raised his hand quickly. It's not me who reported it. Li Ju was stunned for a moment, then thought of some of the weapons in the warehouse and his own skills, and he was not panicked. Although I didn't hide it very much, I didn't show it blatantly. Brother is as careful as dust, and he must have seen the flaws when I took the goods. Brother, you are straightforward, but do you have any ideas to teach me? County Magistrate Zhao said, since my son calls Mr. Huang his master, he treats him as half a father. Mr. Huang does not despise me as a petty official, and is willing to treat me as a brother, so I regard you as a brother. Since Mr. Huang is my brother, Li Baxiu is naturally my brother as well. Why should we have different opinions when we are one family? Mr. Huang's origin is fake, and his excuses to go back to the old house to get things are just excuses. It is true that Mr. Huang has the ability to know everything, but things need people to do. As long as there are people, it is inevitable that the news will leak out. Fortunately, Mr. Huang is really righteous, and he has the means of immortals to shock people, and he has many brothers to support each other. Even if the news leaks out, it will only make Mr. Huang's origin seem more extraordinary, but it will not cause any harm. The main job of County Magistrate Zhao is to manage the economic affairs of the county. Food, livestock, and merchants are all the main business of County Magistrate Zhao. He has been in this business for more than 20 years, and he knows every mountain, stone, grass, and tree in Qingshan County like the back of his hand. Li Ju pretended to be a reclusive child of an aristocratic family, and might be able to fool outsiders like County Magistrate Huang or more noble people like Yufu. But it would be difficult to fool County Magistrate Zhao, who was in charge of mundane affairs, or Dying and Weaving Chen, who had his own ideas. Others might not know what was in the mountains, but how could County Magistrate Zhao not know? Li Ju often took valuable goods out of the mountains. Come on, could they be transported on the forest trails and muddy roads that even horse carriages could not pass? Since they were not transported from the mountains, and there were no foreign merchant ships in regular contact with Li Ju, when Li Ju took out the first few supplies for exchange for money, people had not been to Qingshan County yet, so it could be ruled out that they were obtained from Qingshan County. Then, what else is possible? However, Dying and Weaving Chen had been tied up by Li Ju, and County Magistrate Zhao wanted to take advantage of Li Ju's influence. Therefore, although they found Li Ju's problem, they did not intend to expose or report it, or tell others. Not only did they not talk too much, but they also tried to conceal it for him to ensure that Li Ju would not fall into trouble, and by the way, they could also do him a favor. Li Ju said, then I thank you two brothers for helping to cover it up. So, I want to use work instead of relief to open up the roads between our county and various prosperous cities, and then cooperate with the workshop that I will set up on the mountain to recruit people. Will it work? Chapter 167. Work for relief in the early period of the dynasty. Li Ju's proposal of using work instead of relief is a good idea. All dynasties from ancient times to the present, and in the future, will use this method to balance the needs of displaced hungry people, limited food supply, and unlimited infrastructure plans. There is a historical view that the financial situation of ancient feudal dynasties is often related to time. The earlier the dynasty is, the smaller the cost of infrastructure investment is. The later it is, the more likely it is that the cost of infrastructure is too high and the fiscal revenue is insufficient. If we assume that this argument is reasonable, then using work instead of relief at this time is even more of a good idea. At this moment, Daeong is in the early stage of the dynasty, which is a stage of upward development. Upward development is a good thing for Li Ju and anyone living in Daeong and around Daeong now, regardless of whether this person's attitude towards Daeong is positive or resistant. After all, a chaotic man is not as good as a peaceful dog. A central dynasty has a huge influence on this continent, and a stable dynasty is obviously more in line with people's interests. People in this period are rarely willing to rise up, because often the cruel war is not over. During this period, the country was generally in a state of reconstruction, with limited population and land, which directly determined that the demand for infrastructure would be relatively small. Urban construction, road construction, and the court's control over local areas are all relatively simple, so the cost of investment is not high. When the economy is highly developed in the later period, management costs and construction costs will increase exponentially, and the work for relief at that time will not be as simple as it is now. Now, Li Ju proposed work for relief, so there are many places to start construction. Flipping through the map of Qingshan County, you can repair anywhere, and the fortifications anywhere are not particularly urgent. There is no need for the court to immediately spend a sum of money and grain that exceeds the budget, nor is there a need to look back and forth to select projects. Li Ju asked if it was feasible to send food with one hand and ask for people with the other. County Magistrate Zhao and Huang Jiren thought that the method was good, and they would also make this plan, but this could not avoid Li Ju's biggest problem, the legal source of food. It is not impossible to attribute the rationality to miracles, but if you want to use this mysterious reason, you must solve the corresponding hidden dangers. People will have other needs in the future, such as long droughts, long rains, and earthquakes, and need miracles to save lives. What should Li Ju do? Don't say prevarication or direct refusal. People's desires in desperate situations are difficult to estimate. Li Ju is also a person. When facing a million people or even a city, can he have the ability to retreat unscathed? For example, Li Ju used miracles, which are related to important materials such as food, that can save lives. It will definitely bring Li Ju a very special status and prestige. So, what does the court think of him? How do the kings who do not believe in Buddhism or Taoism think of him? How does the emperor, who represents the will of heaven, treat him? Huang Jiren and Zhao Xiansheng joined forces to suppress the miracles in their drafts. Fortunately, Li Ju does not need to solve the source of 190,000 kilograms of grain. According to optimistic estimates, he does not need to do this year. He can buy a barren mountain next year and slowly add to the stored grain. If refugees from other places unfortunately come to Qingshan County for food, they don't need as much as 190,000. The Huang, Zhao, and Shen families each claimed some, saying that they were stored grain or collected from other places. It would only take more ships and effort to make the account smooth. The two and Li Ju clearly divided which channel the grain came from, and if it was pretended to be shipped from other places, how to load it, and how to replace it, etc. And they talked about it in a very convincing way. Because Li Ju didn't know much about the local customs and people, he listened more and said less. He spent half an afternoon calculating, and finally balanced the accounts. The three agreed that, if they really needed to use the last amount of grain, they would use the method discussed in the afternoon to disguise it. If they didn't need to use it, that would be the best. After settling the bill, County Magistrate Zhao copied the plan into 3 copies, and each of the 3 kept 1 copy. He smiled and said, "No matter what, I still have to thank you for your generosity. There are many people with a family as rich as yours who are willing to give out porridge, but how many can give out 100,000 kilograms of porridge? We have never misjudged you." Li Ju bowed and said, "Thank you and I dare not," and so on. Just as he was about to arrange dinner, the servant outside came to report, "Master, the county magistrate wants you to go to the study to discuss matters immediately." County Magistrate Zhao said, "The messenger must have reported clearly that the county magistrate wants to talk to me about the village. I don't know when I will be back, so please stay with me for a while. Please do as you please." Li Ju and Huang Zhi did not stay for long, and accompanied County Magistrate Zhao out of the door, and returned to Huang's house. Because Li Ju did not send a message back, the kitchen of Li Yuan put 2 meals in a box according to the usual practice at noon, and gave it to the mute to wait for them at the door. Li Ju saw the food box in the mute's hand, and felt a little hungry. He knew that the mute had not eaten dinner yet. He thought that it would be inconvenient for the mute to eat and drink with Huang Zhi at Huang's house, so he said goodbye and went home. Huang Zhi smiled and said, "Why waste their kindness? They originally expected you to have dinner at my house. So come on, you have been busy with the autumn harvest these days, and we haven't talked about books for a while. I don't mind if you call your eldest brother or your half brothers and sisters come with you. Since I call you brother, how can I despise your family? Ask your eldest brother to come with you for dinner." Li Ju saw that he was not reluctant, so he agreed and asked the mute to go to Huang Zhi's flower hall to eat together. Huang's family also prepared some food, and the 2 sides together were just enough for 3 men to eat. It was the time of harvest of melons and fruits, and vegetables, fish and meat were all in good season. Huang's family also bought big crabs and shrimps, and steamed them with yellow wine, and sent them to them for them to taste. Since Li Ju came here, he has been eating and living with the people of Li Garden every day. He only has 1 or 2 simple dishes he likes for each meal. Only when he entertains guests will he prepare fine wine and delicacies according to the season and the guests' tastes. There have been few guests in Li Yuan these past few months, and it is a turbulent time. It has been a while since I had such a banquet. At first glance, they are all delicacies from land and sea. Li Ju couldn't help but laugh and said, "I'm so lucky today. How come there are such delicious dishes? The ones I brought are a bit shabby." Huang Zhi only picked up the braised pork sent by Li Yuan and said, "I like yours better. This is strange. I didn't like the rich and oily sauce before. When I stayed at your house for a few days last year, I felt that my own dishes were tasteless." It is said that people get tainted by bad company. Internal factors are the determining factors, and external factors are just conditions. You have listened to my philosophy class in vain, Li Ju said jokingly, while playing witty tricks with Huang Zhi. He picked up the palm-sized June yellow and cracked it to eat the meat and yellow. He really hasn't enjoyed himself for a while. Seeing that a bunch of troubles will come down on me in the near future, today is a rare day as I can put aside a worry, gain a new ally, and have a break from my busy schedule. If I don't take this opportunity to indulge myself, it would be a shame for all the hard work of these months. Chapter 168, The Stare from Huang Zhi. After the meal, the 3 of them rinsed their mouths and drank tea. Zhu sent the wet nurse to bring Miss Yuan to show Huang Zhi and Li Ju. Huang Zhi loved this girl like a treasure since he got her. No matter how busy he was, he would not rest until he saw his daughter. Recently, there were many things to do. Whenever Huang Zhi had time to see his daughter, she was already asleep. Today, because County Magistrate Zhao took on a lot of things, Huang Zhi and Li Ju had a rare break. Mrs. Huangzu watched the youngest girl finish her milk and ordered her to be taken to her father and adoptive father to accompany her. Huang Zhi took the girl and put her on his knees. Before he was ready, Li Ju gently took her in his arms. The soft little girl had opened her eyes a little, with black eyes and a small nose and mouth. It was obvious that she was a beauty. The 2 fathers were reluctant to let go. Huang Zhi said, "In the past, I always felt that it was not good for you to have no ties. Now think about it, Miss Yi is holding the rope of you, this stubborn bull. Although it is rare to see old fathers who dote on their daughters, they do exist. I just haven't seen anyone dote on them as much as you do. These days, I have been thinking about my own daughter, and I don't know which boy will marry her in the future. If that boy is not better than me, I will never easily agree to marry my daughter. I can't help but think that it will be difficult for you to find a son-in-law when you have your own daughter in the future. A person like me can still find a few young talents who are better than me, but where can you find a son-in-law you like?" Li Ju said, "What's the difficulty? It's my daughter who is getting married, not me. As long as my daughter likes it, and the man likes her, the matter is settled. I don't care about anything else. It doesn't matter if the man is a peddler, a farmer or a fisherman. The young couple will live their own lives. I have food and clothing, so they don't have to worry. Isn't it just about seeing each other happy? What's the difficulty?" Huang Zhi thought for a moment and said, no, if the man my daughter likes is just an ordinary playboy, I will never agree. You are young and don't know the seriousness of the matter. If she meets that troublesome family, our daughter, who is inexperienced, will suffer. Then why not let our daughter see more of the world? You and I will both die one day, and there will be a time when we can't take care of them. What will they do then? As the saying goes, it is better to teach a man to fish than to give him a fish. It is best to let the girl stand on her own. Sanjiu, Xiaolianhura, and Yaoniang in my family all stood on their own in this way. Now that I'm not going home, they can take care of the housework, and everyone can rest assured. Will you do the same when you have a daughter in the future? Of course. I will also teach her to read and write, take her on long journeys, strengthen her body, firm her mind, and broaden her horizons. Listen to me, elder brother. No matter how delicate a daughter is, she is still a living person. Sooner or later, she will have her own ideas and life. We can only watch over her for a while, but not for a lifetime. It is better to let her see everything in the world, and she will naturally not be afraid of meeting the wrong person. Li Ju then used the example of the future theory of raising a child in poverty or in wealth, and tried his best to prove that a girl will not be easily fooled by a mediocre man if she knows more and has seen more. He gave full play to his characteristic of being impeccable in his own logic, which made Huang Zhi half believing and half doubting. He immediately decided to let little Yaoniang follow Li Ju to study for a few years and educate her like a man until she reaches adulthood. That night Huang Zhi talked about this with Zhu. Zhu was happy to hear it, but she became disappointed as she was happy. It's good for the little girl to see the outside world. I also longed for the world outside the boudoir when I was a child. Fortunately, I met you. Since we got engaged, you don't like to restrict me, but are willing to take me out to sea. Thanks to your care, I will die without regrets in this life. But the little girl has been looking at the world since she was a child. When she gets married in the future, it seems too cruel to stay at home and never go out. If she has never seen the vastness of the world, she won't feel anything. But after seeing the magnificent mountains and rivers, she can only be trapped in one place. How sad the little girl must be. Huang Zhi seemed to understand why Li Ju was particularly concerned about Yuanyang's education today. He put down the book and said, then find her a husband who will not restrict her like me. Not only will he not restrict her, but he should also take her out to play. Mrs. Zhu smiled and said, then, where does Feng plan to find one? Your student, or the son of your old friend? Huang Zhi heard the implication of his wife's words and asked, have you chosen someone for our youngest son so early? Not really, but I have confidence in Brother Li's students. Of course, if he has a son, then it would be nice to have one. Think about it, my husband. When Brother Li first came to the county last year, who were the servants he brought with him? Now a year has passed, and they are still the same people, but what kind of people are they? It is known that Brother Li is particularly good at teaching and educating people, so wouldn't it be easier for him to find good talents for his disciples or descendants? Our two families are close friends, and it is easy for us to communicate with each other. If the son-in-law wrongs our youngest son in the future, he can just go back home, and it will be easy for us to talk to our in-laws. What do you think, my husband? Huang Zhi thought for a while according to Mrs. Zhu's meaning, and said, we must quickly arrange a marriage for him. After all, disciples are not as close as sons. I was thinking about it, but it's hard to find talented people. He is neither greedy for women nor scornful of the poor and the rich. He seems to have no requirements, but in fact, his requirements are high. Anyway, I haven't seen a suitable girl. He is not as knowledgeable as me. How can he meet Brother Li's taste? He doesn't even like Miss Zhao. What kind of person is Miss Zhao? I like her when I see her. I think all men in the world like her. I have to take her home and raise her as a sister. Mr. Li, on the other hand, is avoiding suspicion. Zhu said while peeling nuts. She looked up and saw Huang Zhi nodding, as if thinking about something. She said mischievously, hey, speaking of it, my husband often goes to Li Garden, so he should often see Miss Sanjiu. How do you think I compare to Miss Sanjiu? Huang Zhi's scalp tightened, coughed a few times, turned around and didn't say anything. He felt that there was a trap here. If he didn't answer well, he would have to sleep in the study. Fortunately, Zhu had not yet learned the tricks of the future girls to act coquettishly. She only scolded Huang Zhi and let him go. Husband and wife must have this basic trust in life. Li Ju had no idea that his son had been targeted by Mr. Huang next door before he even showed up. He had a rare good meal and the next day he threw himself into his intense work. The autumn harvest was over, and the suspended road construction plan had to be continued. Now that the mule loom on the barren mountain had been built, it had to be used. If it couldn't be started for a while, it would be good to use it as a model to teach others. But now other places in Qingshan County were harvesting, and the extra labor had to be snatched up by the road construction work. In addition, the mule loom was a new thing, and everyone was still a little bit cautious about it. Li Yuan couldn't recruit people to work in the textile industry for a while, so Li Ju had to select some people from Li Yuan who were willing to try the new industry and send them to the textile workshop in the barren mountain to learn how to use the mule loom. This attempt brought up a new problem. The spinning was too fast, and the weaving couldn't keep up. Chapter 169 Shuttle. Yu Yaoniang was the first to discover that the spinning speed was too fast and the weaving could not keep up. In just a few days of training the female workers who volunteered to sign up, Yu Yaoniang was keenly aware of the huge contradiction between supply and demand. The mule spinning machine increased the efficiency of spinning by dozens of times. The yarn spun was adjustable in thickness, flexible and strong, and very easy to use. The more yarn was spun, the more usable the yarn was. But there were only so many weaving hands and looms. Now the looms on the barren mountain can digest the yarn spun by the mule looms, but according to Li Ju's plan, after large-scale assembly, the looms in the entire Qingshan County combined could not use up all their yarn. Yu Yaoniang's conclusion was well-founded. She took out the population of the entire Qingshan County, the estimated number of female workers who could weave, the number of looms, the speed at which the looms consumed yarn, and the amount of yarn produced by the fully loaded mule looms in a day, and listed a table. After adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing, she concluded that at least 4,000 looms were needed to be sufficient. Moreover, when adding looms, it is necessary to draw people from the existing spinners to weave. Simply adding weavers and leaving the existing weavers into shade will still cause a problem of yarn oversupply. Li Ju knew that there were people in Li Garden who usually weaved as a sideline, so he called Wu Guanjie to find out whose room had a loom. Wu Guanjie replied that there were about 7 or 8 people in Li Garden who weaved as a sideline. Most of them were women, but there was a man, Xia Shangzang, who drew illustrations of the 3 kingdoms for Li Ju. Xia Shangzang was slow to react and had a little intellectual problem, but he was very good at imitating and could endure boring work. Instead, he was very suitable for more mechanical labor such as weaving. As long as he was told where to do what, Xia Shangzang could sit there and repeat it all day. Therefore, Zhang Laomu and Wu Yaoniang consulted for advice and finally let their son learn weaving. When ordinary weavers weave, they often have different priorities due to emotional and physiological changes, and there will be subtle differences in the woven cloth. It is different from Yu Yaoniang. He weaves by mechanical repetition. There will be no change from morning to night. Yu Yaoniang is also weaving today, so Li Ju went directly to Yu Yaoniang's house to see the loom. In fact, the looms of this era are already quite developed. The use of hands and feet, and the separation of warps from top to bottom, are the finalized forms after many years of development. If nothing unexpected happens, it will take the electrical age for machines with new principles to replace this loom. At this stage, if we want to improve the efficiency of the loom again, we can only work on the power. The power used by the loom now is manpower. The efficiency has a ceiling, and the width of the cloth is strictly restricted. The general width is only about 1 to 2 feet. There are extra wide cloths, but they are specially woven. Ordinary people have never heard of them, let alone seen or woven them. That's why the modern cloth brought by Li Ju is so easy to sell. Modern cloth is generally 1.14 to 1.5 meters wide, and bedding cloth is 2.4 meters wide. One piece is equivalent to 2, and it is easy to piece together. Li Ju looked at the embroidery samples Zhang's house for a while, figured out the principle of the loom, went back to his room, and sketched the appearance of the loom, and then went to the books in the warehouse to find information. After 2 days of flipping through, he found the flying shuttle technology. The basic principle of weaving is to use the shuttle to pass the weft through the middle of the upper and lower warp threads. At present, the power is mainly used for the lead, the crossing of the upper and lower warp threads, the shuttle, and the winding of the cloth. There are also water-powered looms in the folk, but for various reasons, it has not been on the right track, so the woven cloth is coarse, sparse and not wear-resistant. Li Ju decided to let the craftsman think about the power. What he wants to do now is a flying shuttle. Install a pulley under the existing shuttle, replace the existing shuttle rod with a slide, and configure springs at both ends of the slide. This is the simplest flying shuttle. The flying shuttle is light and quick to use. It releases manpower while improving the efficiency of weaving. And compared with the mule machine that needs to be assembled, trained, and equipped with maintenance workers, the flying shuttle is not too easy to modify. After Li Ju finished drawing the sketch, he immediately asked Wang Dechen to transfer a craftsman to be responsible for the modification of the shuttle and loom. After the craftsman confirmed that it was feasible, he went to the blacksmith shop to place an order for the spring and pulley in batches. As for Yu Yaoniang, Li Ju asked Sanjiu, who was on duty in the barren mountain, to take a message to her, asking her to wait a little longer. When the flying shuttle was made, there would not be such a big gap between supply and demand. It was just that, if we wanted to get a more appropriate matching degree of production efficiency, we needed a power evolution. Li Ju had no idea about steam for the time being. First, there was no rubber or substitute that could be sealed, and second, there was a lack of fuel. Let the steam engine wait a little longer. If the flying shuttle and water power could be combined, it should be able to increase the efficiency of the loom. Textiles were the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. Li Ju released these two artifacts, and he was actually not sure what the future development would be like. However, the improvement of productivity must be a good thing from a macro and long-term perspective, but I don't know how this generation will be affected. In this way, when the shuttle physical sample was made, tested, and confirmed to be feasible, and then installed on the loom for embroidery samples, it was already August, and the grain production situation in Qingshan County and the entire Jiangnan region was almost clear. It was not much different from Li Ju's estimate. Qingshan County was about 30% less than last year. The situation outside was better or worse, and it was about 20% to 30% less. Qingshan County was close to the mountains, and the fog was not easy to disperse, so it was more affected by cloudy days. The growth of crops was not ideal to begin with. The harvest time was too late and it hit the autumn rain belt. Some crops rotted in the fields before they could be harvested and dried. For a while, the whole county was gloomy. Qingshan County was stable because of the government warehouse and Li Ju, the idiot, who could take over at any time, so County Magistrate Wang was not afraid of anything. After the autumn harvest, the work of the entire county government was devoted to counting the grain harvest and preparing relief for the poor who could not survive. Although the situation was not optimistic, it was not too bad. Li Ju invented a mule machine and a flying shuttle. Considering the grain situation, he did not announce it to the public for the time being, nor did he recruit workers. He had to wait until people's attention was diverted from the storage of autumn grain before he could continue. On this day, Li Ju was already thinking about how to improve soil fertility, how to get the mulch film to increase production, etc. He had just thought of the beginning when County Magistrate Wang sent a note to him, asking him to come to the government office as soon as possible. Li Ju couldn't help but feel strange. In the past 2 days, he always heard Huang Zhi, Yufu, and Wu Laoqi talking about relief, old rules, and other counties borrowing grain. Everything was going well. Why did County Magistrate Wang suddenly send a note to invite him to his house? Looking at Huang Zhi and Wu Laoqi, who were still struggling with the dictionary, they were both confused. Obviously, they hadn't heard any rumors. Li Ju took the note and asked the errand boy to have tea and wait for a while. He changed into clothes to meet guests and set off. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. we cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 170, The Best Birthday Gift. County Magistrate Wang came to Liju to talk about a happy event. It turned out that the corn, sweet potatoes and potatoes in the greenhouse of Her Majesty the Queen in the capital had also been harvested. They were just planted casually for fun, but the harvest results surprised everyone. There is no doubt about the water and fertilizer in the greenhouse. The light conditions in the capital are also quite good. They have special people to take care of them, especially the corn that needs to be pollinated. There are several careful eunuchs and palace maids who work together to pollinate. The new variety that has attracted so much attention naturally receives the best care and conditions. It is natural that it grows much better than Lee Garden in the end. The corn with a single ear of 8 teals and 1 or 2 ears per plant has caught people's attention since the day it was born. When it was harvested, everyone who had farmed in the family was stunned when they weighed and counted. Although the queen came from a famous family, the situation was still a bit chaotic when she was a child and she grew up in the countryside. At that time, the queen was fostered in her wet nurse's home and suffered a lot for several years. Although she was not very clear about the grain output, she vaguely remembered the approximate number. According to the cultivation method sent along with the new grain seeds, 1 mu of land can grow 3,000 corn seedlings, and 1 corn seedling can produce 1.5 ears on average. According to the weight of the harvested corn ears, each ear weighs 6 teals, and 1 kine on average. In this way, the yield of the corn planted by the queen can reach 2,700 kilograms per mu. The empress herself was stunned, and she and her mothers, eunuchs, and palace maids all started whispering, 2007? Did we not calculate it wrong? We calculated it several times, and it was our princess who calculated it. How could it be wrong? Is this number exaggerated? The best rice is only more than 300 kilograms, and sorghum, millet and so on, are only 400 kilograms. What do you think? It's such a weird thing, and it can produce 2,700 kilograms of grain per mu? Is it not delicious? The female officials who accompanied the empress were making them smell the top scholar incense and apply borneal oil. After a while, the empress came to her senses and stopped the discussion. Stop for a while and collect the other 2 kinds of grain. If they are both good, it will be a blessing for our great Yang dynasty. Coincidentally, Your Majesty's birthday is coming soon. Is there a better birthday gift than this? The empress chose the first day of August to collect the new grain seeds. She also saw that the corn was growing well and was sure that it would not fail. She saved some money to celebrate the emperor's birthday. Unexpectedly, this was more than pleasing. It was simply terrifying. After waking up, the queen immediately ordered people to quickly collect the potatoes and sweet potatoes. It is not easy to judge the harvest of these two, but the queen has doubled her confidence in Liju's grain. So when the eunuchs and palace people took out a large basket of sweet potatoes and most of a basket of potatoes from the vegetable patch in the greenhouse and weighed them, the queen's first reaction was as expected. Even if the yield per mu cannot be calculated for the time being, judging from the situation, it is definitely more than 2,000 kilograms. Even if potatoes need to be detoxified, and sweet potatoes cannot be used as the only staple food for a long time, they already have the hard conditions to save more people from starvation. Yield. Clean them up, weigh them carefully, and store them carefully. Yingjiao, the queen summoned her maid and ordered, you go and wait outside the council hall in person. When His Majesty finishes the council meeting, you tell the eunuchs around His Majesty that we have harvested new grain sent from Hualien Road today, and the yield is considerable. His Majesty will believe it when he has time to come and see it with his own eyes. If His Majesty asks about the yield, you tell the truth. Yingjiao nodded and helped for a while. When the council meeting was almost halfway through, she left the Jiadafang Palace and went to the council hall in Chengping Pavilion. As expected by the queen, when His Majesty heard from Fengnian that the grain harvested from Lee Garden matched the description in the letter of Hualien and Daode Goose, but the yield per mu was 2,000 kilograms, his first reaction was that the queen was joking with him. He confirmed again and again, and Yungjio insisted that it was indeed the case. The emperor could not sit still and hurried to the Jianfang palace to see it for himself. The second day of August was the emperor's birthday. After the celebration, the emperor rested in the pepper room. At the time when he should have fallen asleep on weekdays, the emperor still couldn't sleep. The queen, who had slept with him for decades, clearly heard him repeating, "This is the best birthday gift. Nothing else is worthy of being called a birthday gift." The queen smiled and fell asleep peacefully. After a while, the emperor's commendation order and decree were passed to Huainan Road, which was exactly why County Magistrate Wang came to find Li Ju. Considering that Li Ju still had to cultivate the seed line in Huainan Road, the emperor wanted to summon Li Ju, but he held back. The commendation was for Li Ju and his ancestors, rewarding them for discovering and cultivating such excellent grain varieties, and being willing to supply them to the outside world. The reward is divided into two parts, some real and some fake. The fake ones are honors, such as plaques, posthumous titles for Li Ju's ancestors, and Li Ju's treatment is a nominal title of Sinang Dafu, and some privileges in dressing, meeting officials, and doing things. The real ones are benefits in his pocket, such as farms, money, objects, and clothing materials. Among them, the more special ones are the 4 official robes and the edict that allows Li Ju to make his own official robes. The official robes and the honorary titles granted by His Majesty the Emperor to Li Ju are consistent in their original intentions, meaning that although Li Ju has no real or nominal position, His Majesty the Emperor has given him this honor and asked others to treat Li Ju in the same way. The 4 official uniforms are court clothes, official clothes, daily clothes, and specially granted bullfighting robes. The official clothes that Li Ju is allowed to make by himself are court clothes, official clothes, daily clothes, and Yanju clothes. Of course, the clothes are given to him. Except for participating in formal occasions of the court, Li Ju can wear them or not at other times. No one, whether the emperor or the local governor, would come to check whether an honorary official was dressed according to the law. Under normal circumstances, they rarely even manage the ministers in the capital. Judging from the color of the official uniform and the pattern of the patch, they were basically of the 5th or 6th grade. The special bullfighting robe material was the configuration of the fragrant bullfighting patched uniform. The honor they represented was almost the same as the 5th grade Sinang Dafu. The 5th grade was important in the local area, but was considered middle and lower in the capital. According to Wang Xianling's speculation, the honorary title was given to the 5th or 6th grade because the seeds provided by Li Ju were only successfully planted and had not been promoted on a large scale. If it could be promoted well in various places, His Majesty would definitely add additional rewards, at least to the 2nd grade doctor, to justify the multiplication of grain production. Wang Xianling understood too well the difficulty for an ordinary person to cross the class and become a civilian scholar. It was simply a challenge like a carp leaping over the dragon gate, so he singled out the official uniform and the honorary title. Li Ju had no feelings about this honorary official status. He only thought that the official uniforms were exquisitely crafted. He felt that they were indeed made with great effort and should be properly preserved to leave archaeological materials for future generations. Apart from that, he only felt that the privilege of not bowing to officials of the 3rd rank and below, as well as the farms and money, were really practical. Li Ju figured out the matter inside and out, and then accepted the imperial decree under the guidance of County Magistrate Wang to express his gratitude. Then he went home to bathe, burn incense, and fast for a few days. He then sprinkled yellow soil, set off firecrackers, hired a sedan chair, and respectfully took the imperial gifts and decree home for worship. Chapter 171. Lao Yu, please help me. The people of Liuan were less sensitive to status than others, but when it came to the government, especially the emperor, the situation was different. Li Ju accompanied the angels to bring the imperial gifts and place them in the small compartment on the 2nd floor of Li Ju's small building. Everyone followed and watched, feeling a little flustered and a little unreal. That was the emperor. They usually panicked when they saw the officials, let alone the last time when it was the emperor. The angels who delivered the rewards to Li Yuan complained about Li Ju's practice of storing all the imperial gifts, including the decree with the emperor's seal, in his study. But after walking and seeing the situation in Li Yuan, they lost their temper. Li Ju's family didn't even have an ancestral hall, and the ancestral tablets were not offered. His study was the most suitable place. After delivering the rewards, the angels returned and left. They had their own county magistrate Wang to receive and see them off. Li Ju wanted to receive them, but they refused. Look at Li Yuan's rural appearance. As soon as they left, everyone in Li Garden immediately surrounded Li Ju's small building, especially Yu Yaoniang and Sun Jiu, who were the first to rush in to watch the fun. The robe bestowed by the emperor was really just a piece of material. The position of each piece of clothing was roughly fixed with thread, and it was rolled up and sent. If you want to wear it, you have to sew it yourself. Li Ju can't sew at all, so Yu Yaoniang and Sun Jiu and others must help make clothes. At least Sun Jiu and Yu Yaoniang are looking forward to it. Seeing that everyone showed a little fear and a little admiration when they were watching the gift, Li Ju didn't get so angry that he would nag them about equality of all beings and class exploitation at this time. He was not crazy. He placed all the things bestowed by the emperor in the study downstairs, except for the books and chapters with text, so that everyone could look at them for themselves. Just don't toss them. At first, everyone was a little hesitant, but later, when one person got a hold of it, the second and third came, and then everyone could touch it and everyone could see it, and then everyone found that it was just like that. The gold and silver granted by the emperor are still gold and silver, and the cloth granted by the emperor may not even be better than the fine silk and satin that Li Ju brought out himself. This era has technology far beyond the future, such as embroidered brocade peacock cloth, etc., which are real works of art that have been piled up at no cost of manpower and resources. Only modern technology and artistic aesthetics can make comparable things. However, these works of art are obviously not within the scope of this imperial gift. The ones that fell into Li Garden are the regular silk and satin embroidery tributes from Zhangjiang, which are not better than the achievements of modern textile dyeing technology. The reverence for the imperial gifts only existed in Li Garden for more than 3 days and then disappeared. Everyone talked about it outside for a while, and people envied it for a while, but when they looked back, it was just that. Only the plaque and a few official uniforms still retained some more inspiring colors. After everyone had seen enough, Li Ju handed over the cloth to Musi clothing store, where Sanjiu and Yu Yaoniang arranged for them to be made into clothes. Before Li Ju said anything, both of them wanted to take on the job of making official uniforms. Li Ju handed the job to them without any care, and they felt constrained again. Fortunately, County Magistrate Wang knew that Li Ju's family must not know how to make official uniforms, so he sent his wife's maid over. County Magistrate Wang had changed his official position several times in the more than 10 years since he entered the court, and he didn't know how many official uniforms he had changed. The first few official uniforms were bought from a shop that specialized in making official uniforms and hats, and the later ones were all made by himself. In terms of experience in making official uniforms, I'm afraid there is no one in the entire Qingshan County who can be compared with his family's clothing maker. His willingness to send people over solved Li Ju's problem. Sanjiu and others, who originally felt that they dared not start, gradually calmed down. Sanjiu and Yu Yaoniang took the sisters from the clothing shop to follow Wang's maid to learn how to cut and make official robes. It seemed that this matter would be over when the official robes were made and put up for display. But Jianan, Wu Shushing, many people in Beijing and the governor of Hualien Road vaguely knew that this was just the beginning. His Majesty's reward to Li Ju was fair and square. The imperial edict and reward were sent all the way to Jiangnan, and officials at all levels sent angels to send him off. Along with the reward, there were many knowledgeable officials and gifts accompanying fame that arrived at Li Garden. Everyone who should know along the way knew it, and Yanan was no exception. Yanan received the news earlier than Hualien Road. His Majesty's birthday banquet personally praised Li Yuan's 3 grains, and this rumor appeared on his desk within 10 days. When he first saw the letter, Yanan was worried about Li Ju. Agriculture is the foundation, food is heaven, and the successful trial planting of grain means that Li Ju has the right to speak. A person who has not taken the imperial examination and does not believe in Confucianism has the right to speak and may even have the influence to influence people, and this person's miscellaneous learning reflects his rebellion against heaven, which is enough to arouse the hatred of the entire literati. But if you think about it carefully, this is a good thing with more advantages than disadvantages. Li Ju has the two words agriculture and food. No matter what he does in the future, he will not die. Agriculture is a life-saving talisman. As for the hatred of the scholars, does Li Ju care? If he cared, he would not have stopped reading the 4 books and 5 classics until now. And how many scholars are there? How many people have studied hard? Compared with the poor people who are struggling for a bite of food, what are they? Give Li Ju some more time. When Li Yuan's grain is promoted throughout the world, he will conflict with the scholars. Will Li Ju be the one who is weak and powerless? After thinking this through, Yunnan was no longer panicked. He also wrote a letter. One letter was sent to Li Ju, encouraging him to continue to cultivate grain seeds, and reminding him to maintain a humble attitude, and not to get carried away, because of a momentary complacency. The other letter went to the capital, and was written to the son of Zheng Shidao, a great Confucian scholar of the time. When Zheng Shidao's son was an editor, he had a good relationship with Yunnan. Yunnan wrote to him, describing Li Ju's affairs in detail, and at the end, hoped that he could persuade Zheng Shidao to protect Li Ju at the right time. Yu Fu was still doing odd jobs in the garden. After Yunnan finished writing the letter, he asked someone to invite a retainer to copy it. The retainer copied the letter, and Yu Fu read it, while complaining to himself in his heart, why is it that, now that I have retired, I'm so proud of someone I have never met. The retainer copied it carefully, and Yu Fu read it carefully again, and finally sealed it with wax, and sent it out. Li Ju was completely unaware of the undercurrent outside. The matter of His Majesty the Emperor's grace and reward was about to come to an end, and the issue of grain was indeed placed on the table of County Magistrate Wang. The court reduced the taxes of Qingshan County and some nearby counties that were also affected by the disaster, but did not exempt them completely, nor did it allocate money and grain to support them. Last year, the north suffered some disasters, and part of the stored grain was consumed last year. It was still relying on the grain delivered from Jiangnan to fill some warehouses slightly. This year, the south has been rainy, while the north has been fine and good. However, an earthquake occurred between the west of Luoyang Road and the east of Yuzhan Road, affecting more than 20,000 mu of farmland, of which more than 8,000 mu were completely lost. A locust plague occurred in Sainan, reducing the yield of farmland by more than 100,000 mu, and most of them were completely lost. So the little grain stored last year has been squeezed out by these two places with completely lost crops. From this point of view, although Jiangnan has suffered a disaster, it has not reached the point of complete loss of crops after all. The court hopes that they can grit their teeth and find ways to get through it. Of course, the court documents did not say it so directly, but that's what it meant. Sima County magistrate once suspected that someone was targeting Dasan County because of Li Ju's incident, but he heard that Huajia County and other places were even worse off, and the local officials were directly reprimanded, and it seemed that Dasan County was not deliberately criticized. In addition, there is good news. Considering that Huainan Road is a land of fish and rice and an important granary, the reduction in granary production will not only affect the lives of local people, but more importantly, it will affect the court's dispatch and the reserves of large official warehouses such as Pingsheng Warehouse and Luoyang Warehouse. Therefore, the court allowed Huainan Road, Lingbei Road and Heiang Road to restart the seaports, and allowed the use of some special licensed items to trade grain. This kind of thing has happened before. The previous dynasty made a lot of money, which led to everyone in the whole Jiangnan pursuing profits and farmland being abandoned. Later, a famine directly led to the uprising of civilians in Jiangnan. The establishment of the Great Yan Kingdom may have taken advantage of the chaos in Jiangnan. Therefore, after the establishment of the Great Yan Kingdom, in order to encourage agriculture and prevent merchants from harming farmers, several important grain-producing areas along the coast were not allowed to participate in overseas trade. If you want to trade overseas, you must go out to sea from the Yanzhou North Road outlet near the capital, which invisibly strangled Jiangnan's overseas trade with high transportation costs. This time, the decree came down with the intention of opening sea trade in exchange for grain. For a while, Sima Junshao felt a little unreal. Chapter 172, A person who returns his favor. The court opened up the 3 southern provinces to sea trade on a small scale, which was great news for Li Ju. He didn't have to worry about the price of cloth plummeting due to the mule loom. He just had to be careful not to see the extreme situation where profit-seeking cash crops abandoned grain production. Yu Yaoniang had been in regular contact with Li Ju since she wrote a report to get the flying shuttle last time. Yu Yaoniang was an ambitious person, and Li Ju was willing to fulfill her ambition, provided that she really showed the corresponding ability. Shortly after Li Ju received the reward, Yu Yaoniang wrote a letter to her father and sent it back to the house, expressing congratulations and saying that 3 sets of mule looms and 10 flying shuttle looms had been debugged, and 6 people who could be used as squad leaders and their replacements had been taught, asking Li Ju for instructions. Li Ju was in high spirits. The autumn harvest was over, and after paying taxes, people would be free. This year's production has been reduced again, and people will have a stronger motivation to make money. In this way, the difficulty of recruiting female workers has been reduced a lot. So Li Ju wrote down the recruitment conditions and requirements of Liuan Textile Factory No. 1, and prepared to find a few peddlers and brokers to go to the countryside to publicize it. Just at this time, the villagers of King Niu village, who came to ask for help during the autumn harvest, came to give Li Ju a thank you gift. In addition to the 2 farmers who had found Liuan before, there was also the elder who directed them to Liuan at that time. The 2 men among the 3 were surnamed Zhang, and the woman was a widow from another village who married to King Niu village. Her maiden name was Zhao. They were all in their 30s, and acted a little more generous than ordinary farmers and wives. If they were not so bold, they would not dare to bite the bullet and come to the county town for help. Relying on Liuan's assistance, the people of King Niu village survived until the county government allocated relief, and now they are finally not starving to death. Everyone thought that Master Li had helped them generously, even though they had never met him. Today, they have recovered from their shock and should thank him. But the village was so poor that only the northwest wind and riverbed soil remained, and it was not heard that Mr. Li had any hobbies. If he came empty-handed, he would be very embarrassed. Just when he was at a loss, a big wild boar came to the village. The big wild boar and its half-grown cubs pushed down the wall of Zhang Zhao's house, but the boar was buried inside and could not get out. Zhang Zhao caught it in a jar. The 2 wild boars had at least 100 kilograms of pure meat, so there was a gift that could be presented. Zhang Zhao discussed it with the clan leader and resisted the desire to eat, and persuaded the villagers who were about to grow hooks in their rice to agree to disassemble and clean the 2 wild boars, pickle them with precious coarse salt, and prepare to send them to Mr. Li. Regardless of the fact that they still owed Li Yuan grain, oil, rice and flour, they would pay it back as much as they could, and they would delay it for a while. Just calculate how many days the 2 wild boars can eat. How many years can they save by establishing a good relationship with Li Ju? This account was very difficult for the farmers who wanted to eat meat, but it was also very simple. In the end, those who wanted to share the meat were persuaded by Zhang Zhaoxi. The elders took Zhang Zhaoxi and Zhang Degaozi together, took the only cart in the village with wheels that could still move, piled the pickled wild boar meat on it, and took a winding road to deliver it to Li Yuan. Maybe the quality and quantity of salt were not enough, and the wild boar meat on the cart was already slightly smelly when it was delivered to Li Yuan. The 3 people from King Niu village didn't think much of it. What's the big deal about smelly meat? The meat they could eat, except for the fresh fish and meat that were just slaughtered on the day they were distributed, was not the meat they could eat on other days that they were reluctant to throw away, even if it was smelly or rotten. Even so, there were many people who had never seen what meat looked like in their lives. The 3 of them entered Li Yuan smoothly, and the elders wanted to kowtow to the host family first, just like they did when they went to other families to beg for alms. Zhang Zhao knew last time that Li Ju would not buy it, so she quickly supported the elder and took half a step forward. She bravely and clumsily bowed to Li Ju and said to him in her stuttering dialect with gestures, "Greetings to the master. Thanks to the master, our villagers have survived. Look, we have finally killed such a big wild boar and brought it to you. Li Ju asked sincerely, why don't you keep it for yourself? There are still elderly people, children and pregnant women in the village, right? It's the time when you need to eat meat to replenish your body. Why do you care about these things? The elder could understand Mandarin and translated it for Zhang Zhao. Zhang Zhao replied, we are not so lucky, and I'm afraid we won't be able to enjoy it. Everyone is grateful for your kindness and says that only you deserve to eat this. It happened that I have nothing to do recently, so I brought it to you. Li Ju thought about it and knew what was going on. After thinking for a while, Li Ju did not refuse the cart of spoiled wild boar meat. He called Chu Sanlang to find someone to collect the wild boar meat and said, guests are welcome. It's late tonight. You can stay overnight, have 2 meals, and go back tomorrow. I know that farmers have a hard time, but I really don't have time to go to the countryside. At the beginning of last month, I heard Jeteng and others say that your livelihood is difficult. I don't know how it is now. It's a good opportunity for us to chat while eating. Chu Sanlang, tell the kitchen to make 3 more meals than I make. Chu Sanlang took the order and left. Li Ju asked Wu Dalang's son to lead them to the place where they were staying. Then he picked some necessities for the winter from the warehouse, such as unpackaged compressed biscuits, moisture-proof cloth, quilts, cotton padded jackets, stoves, smoked sausages and cured chickens, Chinese patent medicine pills, medicinal wine, etc., and packed them up for Zhang Zhao and the other 2 to take back. Life is hard enough, why not be more kind to others? He only needs these few things, how can he take all the benefits in the world? In the evening, Li Ju led the 3 of them to the flower hall next to the main hall to sit and eat. The mute who had been following Li Ju also ate according to Li Ju's routine. The 5 meals were exactly the same, with 3 large bowls and a bamboo tube for each person, a bowl of roasted chicken with chestnuts, a bowl of fried beans and eggplant with meat oil, a bowl of rice, and a tube of kelp soup. Zhang and Zhao had never eaten a meal with 3 dishes before, and they couldn't finish the meal, even though they were full. They were so anxious when they saw so many leftover dishes. Li Ju simply found 3 stainless steel bowls to put their leftovers in, covered them tightly, and froze them in the natural ice storage next to the spring, telling them not to forget to take them out early tomorrow morning and eat them on the road. The elder of the clan had seen a little bit of the world and said with a bit of embarrassment, Your Excellency laughed at us. It's really rare for us to have a proper meal. It's okay. Li Ju was used to packing up leftovers, and for a moment he didn't realize that the 3 of them were uncomfortable because they were reluctant to throw away the leftovers rather than because they had eaten the leftovers. He smiled and said, I rarely have leftovers. Adao and I have big appetites, and the kitchen is used to preparing meals according to our appetites. This is a lot, and it's normal that you can't finish it. In the future, life will get better and better, and everyone can eat meat and rice. Get used to it first. After cleaning up the bowls and leftovers, Li Ju grabbed a large cattail leaf fan and waved it in his hand. He looked like the most ordinary old man squatting on a tree stump at the entrance of the village, which made Zhang Zhao and the other to let go of some of their restraint and vigilance. After a chat, Li Ju finally got to the point. So, this is not the first time your village has been flooded? Chapter 173, The First Generation of Workers. Water is the lifeline of agriculture and the bottom line of human survival, so human civilization has been inseparable from water since ancient times. The main buildings and settlement centers of Qingniu Village, Qingshan County, Dashan County, and even the entire prosperous Hualien Road are all attached to the capillary-like river. People rely on water sources to survive, and when the water sources dry up or flood, they will take away people's lives and property. Qingniu Village is such a place that struggles with the river every year. In good years, people reclaim land on the tidal flats, and the fertile silt brings unlimited possibilities to agriculture. In bad years, such as this year, if the rain is a little more abundant, the raging floods will engulf the farmland, resulting in the farmers who have worked hard for a year to get nothing. Zhang Zhao thought of the fields that were hard to open up, and this year the seedlings were just ears, and they were flooded clean. She couldn't help crying. Li Ju asked about the situation in the past few years, and only then did he know that the water level of the small river next to Qingniu village has been getting higher and higher in recent years, and there has been a trend of flooding farmland for 2 consecutive years. It was just that it was not the farming season last year, so it was not too serious. Li Ju had some guesses, but there was no evidence, and it was not convenient to speak without thinking, so he just said, "Speaking of which, I have just set up a textile workshop here, and I need to recruit some diligent and careful people to work. 4 hours a day, wages are paid according to the amount of spinning and weaving, and 3 meals and accommodation are provided. If there is a diligent person in the village who has no way to make a living, you can bring her to our Uncle Wang to find a job." Zhang Zhao and the other two were delighted and very tempted. Li Ju also emphasized that women can also come. There is a special female worker class, and the foremen are all women. If you learn to repair, disassemble and assemble machines while working, you can also be transferred to a place with higher wages. The next day, Zhang Zhao couldn't wait to call her companions and hurried home. She had already inquired and learned that Li Yuan's job vacancies were rare, and once there were vacancies, everyone would fight for them. It was obvious that this time Li Ju sympathized with the tribulations in their village and deliberately told her in advance. If she didn't cherish this opportunity, she didn't know when she would have to wait for the next one. Zhang Zhao returned to Qingniu village and excitedly went to discuss with her old sisters. Now is the slack season for farming, and at home we can only make a living by picking wild vegetables, collecting firewood, and fishing. We can't earn a bowl of rice to fill our stomachs in 3 to 5 days. It's better to go to the town and try our luck. If we are lucky enough to be hired as a worker, we will have no worries about food and clothing on weekdays, but we will have nowhere to spend our wages. We can save them for 6 months and come back in time before the spring plowing. Several families can get together to buy oxen, iron rakes and other farm tools so that we can plow a few more acres of land next year. Everyone was very tempted, but after a discussion, they all hesitated. The sister-in-law at the East End said, "It's so embarrassing for us women to go out to work. We might get beaten by our family." The aunt at the West End said, "If we go to the county, we will have to wear a pair of shoes and bring dry food. If we are selected, it's fine. If we are not selected, we will return empty-handed and waste all these days." Another one said, "We can do spinning and weaving at home. Why does Mr. Lee want to recruit workers? Maybe he has other plans." Another one said, "I always feel uneasy. This Mr. Lee is too good. When have I ever seen such a good person? Don't tell me that he is like that old Lu who cheats people and then sells them." Zhang Zhao went from house to house to persuade them. In the end, only 7 people were willing to go to the city with her. Including her, there were exactly 4 men and 4 women. They packed up the last bit of things in their impoverished home and set off to Liyuan before dawn on a cloudy day to make a living. The 8 of them were old and young, some were capable and some were slow to act. Considering the role of role models, Li Ju hinted to Wang Dechen that all of them should stay, at least until the spring plowing next year. In this way, Zhang Zhao and 8 other farmers in Qingniu village became the first batch of real industrial workers in Dayang's history. After a period of training, Yu Yaoniang led the female workers and another male weaver led the male workers to turn the spindle wheels of the mule loom. Amid the huge sound of water and the noise of the machine running, they started the first primary industrialized production. Zhang Zhao was a perceptive woman. From the first time she came to Liyuan, she trusted the seemingly threatening Master Li without reservation, and her intuition never missed a time. Her intuition made her come to the door to thank him, let her take the risk of getting involved in a new field, and made her make up her mind a few months later to give up the land in Qingniu village and become a formal female worker. Zhang Zhao calculated very clearly that the treatment given by Li Yuan was naturally beyond her reach. She could not even beg for it. Besides, she did not sign a contract to sell her body, so she was still a commoner and could rent or buy a house near the barren mountain. The most important thing is the mule-type spinning wheel, which can carry hundreds of spindles at a time, and its spinning efficiency is many times higher than their hand-cranked spinning wheels. As long as Li Ju is willing, he can monopolize the cotton yarn business within a radius of 800 miles. From the back and forth movement of the spinning wheel and the rapidly rotating spindles, Zhang Zhao saw a huge and unheard of monster. This monster can swallow people with one bite and shake the ground with one claw, but it was firmly held in Li Ju's hand. After the new year, Li Ju came to her for a sincere talk, hoping that she could completely turn into a full-time textile worker. Zhang Zhao agreed and asked someone to take a message back to the village to donate the few acres of land in her family to the clan and borrow money from Yu Yaoniang to buy a small bungalow of a farmer near the barren mountain. The few acres of land of Zhang Zhao's family are flooded more and more every year. This year, they are all flooded, and it is unknown what will happen next year. There are many people buying such land. If it weren't for her strong personality, how could she keep this livelihood? Since she has a better livelihood now, she doesn't want the land anymore. She just wants to follow Li Ju and have meat to eat. After Zhang Zhao became a professional worker, she gradually led some women. With trepidation, they abandoned the land that their ancestors had worked hard for generations for a high salary and walked into the Li Yuan textile factory with the misunderstanding and even contempt of the world. This is all later. At the end of August and the beginning of September, although Li Ju had made plans for the future, he didn't expect to achieve a breakthrough in the workforce so quickly. After sending the 8 people from King Niu village to Yu Yaoniang and others for training, Li Ju's next attention was focused on the Huanggang Cheng's Common Dictionary. Wu Shusheng and others spent nearly 2 months proofreading the dictionary, and Huang Zhi refined it again. This draft looked almost ready to use. The entry-level version of the Huang's dictionary contains more than 3,000 characters and more than 50,000 entries, which can easily cope with the learning stage of Tongsheng and below. Li Ju was not very clear about these specific matters. When he learned that the first draft was finalized and could be published, he immediately asked the kitchen to hold a banquet to celebrate. Chapter 174, Li Baxiu's words follow the law. The Plate-Making and Printing Book Association chaired by Li Ju shared the publishing rights of Huang Zhi's dictionary. Each family paid a fee in proportion to their voting rights, and then waited for an auspicious day to light firecrackers to celebrate this event. County Magistrate Wang also came in person to preside over the ceremony of printing and took away the first finished product of the front page. The dictionary based on Pinyin and radicals had been tried out on a small scale several times before, and most people gave good feedback and said they would buy 1 or 2 copies for their children and grandchildren to use for reading. This undoubtedly gave Huang Zhi and the printing workshop a reassurance. Dictionaries are not rare, but reference books that scholars have at least heard of. Pinyin has also been unanimously recognized by most students and teachers during the dissemination last year. There were even others who wanted to combine the two, but they were slower than Huang Zhi and have not yet completed the manuscript. Therefore, everyone is quite optimistic about the prospects of the Huang's dictionary. After the ceremony, they immediately started to engage in the tense links such as engraving and preparing paper. The dictionary is destined to be a large volume. The better quality version even needs to be split into 7 or 8 volumes to ensure the quality of binding. The printing time and cost are not low. After watching the excitement for a few days, the interested people gradually forgot about this matter. Only the printing houses were still operating silently. After solving the dictionary issue, Li Ju did not have time to rest and immediately devoted himself to the matter of this year's autumn grain harvest. Because the court stated that it was impossible to allocate grain to Jiangnan, the amount of grain that was previously calculated to be sufficient suddenly became a bit tight. At that time, County Magistrate Wang was still optimistic until he received a letter of request for help from Huajia County and a private letter from the governor of this road, hoping that the relatively better situation in Dasan County, Dayao County and other places could allocate some grain to other places. The governor knew that this year's harvest was difficult, but the situation in Huajia County and most of the counties in Lingbei Road was worse than imagined. First, the granaries caught fire one after another. After a lot of effort, they managed to save a few granaries, but found that the remaining granaries were either empty or had very little grain, only some shriveled grains that were newly stored this year, or they were rotten. Huajia and other places, which were originally calculated to be not much worse than Dasan County, had to bite the bullet and ask the superiors for grain. Of course, it was not the turn of County Magistrate Wang to hold accountable for the fire in the granary and the poor storage of grain. County Magistrate Wang could only privately scold those colleagues who were in office and profiteers who took people's lives lightly in front of his trusted generals, and on the surface, he had to selflessly find a way to raise some food. He had to think of a way. Huajia County and other places were so close. If the local county magistrate was shameless and allowed the people to flow into Dasan County, Qingshan County, which was closest to Huajia under the jurisdiction of Dasan County, would be immediately overwhelmed by the hungry people. At least, he had to give the hungry people a thought, and people with thoughts would rarely take risks. Finally, County Magistrate Wang had no choice but to use the government's decision-making power in the joint venture to search for local big households and plunder their stored grain. Li Ju took the lead in handing in 100,000 kilograms of grain, pretending that it was purchased from other places. He entrusted Huang Zhi to help with the cover-up and asked dyeing and weaving Chen and manager Liu to transport it to the dock in disguise and then handed it over to County Magistrate Wang for processing. After sending dyeing and weaving Chen and manager Liu to carry the grain purchased from other places, Li Ju had not sat down to catch his breath before Yaoniang and Yaoniang came. Since the two of them each got a play, you sing today and I sing tomorrow, their relationship has improved a lot, and even the local guild leaders and Jinling female musicians have gradually put aside their prejudices, recognized each other as sisters, and have been advancing and retreating together since then. At this time, the west wind was not strong, the climate was still warm, and it happened to be a cloudy day, so Li Ju poured 3 cups of tea, put them on a tea tray, and invited the two girls to sit down at the stone table beside the farmland canal outside to talk about things. Yaoniang and Yukin bowed and sat on the stone bench. They explained their purpose, which was to collect grain. Yukin explained, "This is just our idea. Please help me, sir. The harvest here is already difficult, and we need to transport grain to other places. You are generous, and bought 100,000 kilograms of grain. We want to follow your example, but we are really short of money. So we thought that, since we can earn money by singing opera, why not exchange it for grain? First, it is a little thought, and second, it is for us, and for the reputation of the opera troupe." Li Ju didn't think there was anything wrong with this, and nodded in agreement. This is a good idea. It is decent, nice, and practical. But, in the whole Jiangnan, the only places that didn't suffer from the disaster are Jinling and Gusu. They didn't suffer from the disaster because they didn't make a living from agriculture. They mainly run workshops and businesses. Although they didn't suffer from the disaster this year, the price of rice is very high, and there is no surplus. Where do you plan to perform for charity? Yaoniang said, "The word charity performance is good. We will call it that when we go out. We plan to perform charity performances in several counties between Huaibei and Lunan. First, there are ports for water transport and many grain stores, so there should be grain. Second, the land and water transportation there is prosperous, so it is easy for local people to buy grain. Third, it is not too far from here. If you think about it carefully, it is not much different from our trip to Nanjing. The cost on the road is not much, and if something unexpected happens, it will not be too far away. What do you think, master?" Li Ju said, "That's also appropriate. You can make preparations. What kind of play to perform, who will go, and who will stay, and what to do if something unexpected happens along the way. You have to think carefully, and don't be careless. And I can't just stand by and watch you, so I'll ask Liu to help send servants to protect you, and the servants' travel expenses will be paid by me. Secondly, I'll think of a rule for you to make it easier for you to raise grain. How about it?" Yaoniang and Yukin nodded, both thinking that it should be so. They were only responsible for singing the show well, and they couldn't think of other things. The small things were all handled by the troupe owner, and the big things were up to Li Ju. Li Ju immediately threw out the long-shelved modern voting mechanism for the charts. What attitude and posture were the most appropriate, how to warm up the hype when they went together, how to arouse everyone's desire to win when raising food, and how to use food to vote for the actors. It's a science to say too much. There are also issues of personal safety, how to deal with robbers on the road, how to deal with people who have power and oppression. They are all civilians, and even considered untouchables in the eyes of the public, but they are born with beautiful faces and graceful figures. Who wouldn't be tempted? There is no guarantee that there will be no bad intentions from those wild and playboys. Li Ju must plan in advance, and maybe he will have to borrow the reputation of Yunnan and others to suppress others. This borrowing of power, you can't borrow it randomly, right? There must be a rule. Although Li Ju thought of these things at the last minute, he followed the logic and wrote a longer and longer list of precautions. It was very comprehensive in every aspect. It didn't seem like he was taking care of the family, but more like he was sending off relatives and friends. Yuka knew that Li Ju had a fussy temper, so she didn't say which of the things in the list were his overthinking. She just smiled and looked at the list and Hong's mind was all under Li Ju's fingertips, and her eyes couldn't suppress her love. Chapter 175, The Contradiction of Magistrate Wang. Dayan Club, and even the girls in music clothing store, all like Li Ju to some extent. This kind of liking is very complicated. There is the dependence of a younger sister on her older brother, such as Xinhang and Wu, the admiration of a daughter for her father, such as Yaoniang and Xiaolian, and the respect and admiration, such as Sanjiu, Gizzy, and Acui. There is also love between men and women, such as Hong. Li Ju's appearance is not the kind that people in the world like, either with a face like a beautiful woman, or with a broad forehead and wide chin, especially with a sense of classicism. Most girls still prefer fair and gentle gentlemen, but Li Ju looks like a warrior who is strong and powerful and intimidating. Most girls will feel a little scared when they see Li Ju, even if they know that Li Ju is a good person. This is a kind of consciousness projection of self-safety and self-protection ingrained in their genes. It's not that Li Ju looks like a bad guy, but that he looks too threatening. Hong is different from Xinhang and others. Hong has experienced too much, and it is time for her to be awakened. She understood too well what the people who interacted with her thought of her, and how they viewed her. Those who looked at her as if she were a dead object, those eyes that wanted to eat her alive, those malicious expressions that guessed the price of spending a night with her, and the sneers that despised her for being willing to be a prostitute for money, were all exposed in people's gestures. Apart from her sisters, only Li Ju treated her as a human being. Not only that, but he was also so nice to her. Following Li Ju, she was willing to eat coarse food. Hong did not dare to hope that she could marry Li Ju as his wife, but Li Ju clearly said that he would not take concubines, so Hong had to suppress the thought in her heart. But feelings are something that cannot be suppressed just because you want to. As long as they exist, there will definitely be a hint of sweet joy from the corners of your eyebrows and eyes. Hong is in this state now. She thinks she is suppressing it, but Xiao is so smart that he can see through her at a glance. Only Li Ju didn't notice it and thought that this girl was strange. She was obviously a bold and careful person, but why was she always so timid? She thought that it was because of her big body that the girls were scared, and she deliberately reduced her contact with them. If Hong knew that the truth was that Li Ju left them in the small house of Dayan Club and left them alone, she would cry to death. In short, Hong was even happier to have a chance to talk to Li Ju in detail about so many things about the troupe, especially that Li Ju accepted their kindness and considered them everywhere when making plans. Li Ju wrote down all the arrangements on the road and the plans. After arriving at the place, he was afraid that any incompleteness would cause his own troupe to suffer grievances, so he specially called Wang Bantao and broke it down and explained it to him 5 times. After confirming that Wang Bantao really understood, he let him go and let him go back to prepare. After 4 or 5 days, manager Yu Yaoniang Wang helped to raise a team of guards, and after everything was done, they sent Hong and others on their way north with a long convoy of luggage. After seeing off the Dayan Club, Li Ju turned back to help County Magistrate Wang deal with the allocation of grain into the warehouse. County Magistrate Wang invited Li Ju and Huang Zhi to have a drink, saying that it was to thank him, but Huang Zhi and Li Ju both felt that this matter was not that simple. The two guessed for a while, but there was no result. Until 2 days later, at the banquet, County Magistrate Wang brought Wu Shushan with him. Li Ju still didn't understand, but Huang Zhi, who was worldly wise, guessed it. County Magistrate Wang dismissed the miscellaneous people, and each of them only left a trusted book boy to serve by the side. Li Ju always did things by himself, so he let the mute eat by himself at a small table on the side. County Magistrate Wang coughed and said, "Gentlemen, I will be transferred in more than 3 months. You two are the most important people in this city and the most loyal to the court. You are all familiar with Mr. Wu, so I thought of gathering everyone together and formally introducing you to each other." Li Ju understood that it turned out that Wu Shushan Wu Laoki was the one who would take over the position of county magistrate. After getting along for the past 2 or 3 months, Li Ju had a good impression of Wu Shushan, and Wu Shushan had a very good impression of Li Ju. Even though Wu Shushan deliberately concealed his identity, the two became drinking buddies. It was a blessing for both of them that Wu Laoki took over as county magistrate. County Magistrate Wang directly mentioned Wu Shushan's background and told the two that Wu Shushan was already preparing for the handover, which was considered an introduction to them. After 3 rounds of wine, Magistrate Wang said with a smile, "I heard that Brother Baxiu's textile workshop is also doing well. I know everything about it, since Baxiu came to Qingshan County at the end of last year. The only thing I haven't seen is this new textile workshop. I don't know what the specific situation is. Is it appropriate for me to go to Suiyuan County to take a look?" Li Ju said, "We have just recruited new workers and are still teaching them how to use it. They should be able to learn it in a few days. When the work officially starts there, I will write a letter to invite you to adults to go and have a look. It is also very easy to take it to other places. Although the thing is heavy, it is very easy to find local craftsmen to assemble it by yourself with a design. If you are worried that the local craftsman will not be able to get the job done, you can find a craftsman who is willing to go with you to learn, and then ask him to go to the post after he has learned it. What do you think?" Magistrate Wang said, "This is appropriate, but..." He hesitated, as if he wanted to ask something, but didn't know how to start. Li Ju felt that he had done nothing wrong, so he asked directly, "But what?" County Magistrate Wang felt embarrassed because of his status. It was difficult to talk about the next matter. Li Ju had an honorary title, and he and Li Ju had a good relationship. If he spoke too harshly, it would seem like he was questioning someone beyond the scope of his authority, and if he spoke too softly, it would seem like he was tipping off someone. Moreover, he was handing over matters to Wu Shushan while carrying out disaster relief. His current position seemed to be half in Qingshan County and half far away. If he managed the workshop so carefully, it would seem like he was meddling too much. County Magistrate Wang did not want to have any conflicts with Li Ju. A good beginning and a good end would lead to a good relationship. He would need Li Ju many times in the future. However, he could not let Wu Shushan handle it. After all, Wu Shushan had just arrived, and it would take time for him to deal with the local forces. He could not just form cliques and help one side suppress the other right after taking office. If that happened, would he still be able to govern? Huang Zhi asked, "Did the matter of Baxiu's textile workshop hiring female workers come to your attention?" County Magistrate Wang knew that Huang Zhi had the sharpest eyes, so he was not surprised that he knew about it. He said, "That's right. I don't know how to tell Baxiu. It's just a small matter to me, not worth mentioning. But the person who brought it up is an old gentleman in the school, a man you and I both respect, so we have to talk about it. Fortunately, you revealed it." Scholar Wu was quite surprised. Li Ju replied nonchalantly, "The female workers I hired are at least 60 years old, if not 80. They have been talking about it for more than a year. When I send meat to the school at the end of the year, they will definitely not dare to say anything. I promise to clear this matter up before Lord Wu takes office." County Magistrate Wang said, "It's different this time. Before, you recruited female workers, but you treated them as long-term workers. From the outside, they looked like your servants, who doesn't have a mother and breastfeeding. So I didn't argue. This time is different. They are working in the workshop. I heard that they are working with men. Isn't this immoral?" County Magistrate Wang himself was also very conflicted. On the one hand, He hoped that the people under his rule would live well, so the wages in Liju's hands were very important to his people, and he didn't want them to cut off this income. At the same time, he couldn't let the farmers abandon farming, so it was a good thing for female workers to go to the city. Men continued to farm, and women earned more money, so that their entire family could be richer. On the other hand, he didn't approve of female workers coming out to work. Women were responsible for the home, and men were responsible for the outside. This was the rule for thousands of years. Even if the man died, and the woman became a female household, it would be difficult for this female household to work with the men. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.